Chapter 2296. Stop. In the original realm where the 3,000 realms of the Great Path were, there was a terrifying disturbance in the sky above the boundary of the heavenly mandate realm. In the heavens above, menacing dark fissures seemed to appear. The cultivators of the heavenly mandate realm immediately glanced over towards the direction of the commotion. They saw an extremely astonishing sight. A gigantic dragon turtle bearing an ancient ruined city was traversing across the sky. As it did so, it was descending, seemingly approaching the boundary of the heavenly mandate realm. The terrifying dark fissures seemed to consume everything. What was that? Countless cultivators of the heavenly mandate realm witnessed this awe-inspiring scene. They were greatly affected as this scene was too shocking. Not only were they looking at the gigantic dragon turtle, but they were also glancing at the cultivators around it. Each of these cultivators was a top figure. They were actually following the dragon turtle, which was carrying an ancient ruined city on its back as it advanced. What did they want? Lord Taishian is also among them, someone exclaimed. Many people spotted Lord Taishian and the others. The top cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy were also there. It was not just them. The cultivators from various top forces were all there. Retreat! Someone cried out. The dragon turtle was advancing at a frightening speed, descending towards them. No one knew where it would land. It was likely that it would crash on the outskirts of the Heavenly Mandate realm. Many cultivators were already beginning to retreat. In the sky, Lord Taishian looked towards the direction where the dragon turtle was moving. He could not help but frown when he traced its trajectory. It was highly likely that it would collide with the boundary of the Heavenly Mandate realm. However, they had no means of preventing it from doing so. Although more and more cultivators were rushing over to where they were still severely outnumbered. They could not block the dragon turtle's path. They had attempted to do so many times along the way. It's getting close, someone shouted. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate realm dispersed. The dragon turtle descended in an imposing manner. It appeared like an evil demon that wanted to consume everything. With an ancient city on its back, it descended upon the lands on the outskirts of the Heavenly Mandate realm and crashed right into it. Rumble. The dragon turtle crashed into the boundary of the Heavenly Mandate realm. Terrifying fissures appeared on the ground, followed by earth and debris scattering everywhere. The frightening jet-black fissures consumed everything. It was as though the heavens and earth were collapsing. At that moment, the entire Heavenly Mandate realm felt a tremor. The closer they were to this place, the more intense the tremor felt. There were even frightening cracks that propagated far into the distance. It seemed as though the land was being ripped apart. It was a catastrophe. Down below, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy unleashed the divine light of the Great Path, sweeping away a group who had not managed to get away, thereby protecting them. The dragon turtle's advance was not hindered too greatly. It continued downwards, penetrating the Heavenly Mandate realm. The lands along the boundary were immediately reduced to rubble and later consumed by the jet-black fissures. After the dragon turtle left, Lord Taishian and the others left the people they had saved at a safe location before continuing to pursue it. The cultivators bowed slightly at Lord Taishian and the others. Emotions welled up in them for having survived a disaster. The scene just now was too terrifying. They lowered their heads and peered down below. Their hearts still trembled intensely beyond their control. What exactly was that thing? There seemed to be a grave on the back of the dragon turtle. After piercing through the Heavenly Mandate realm, the dragon turtle had completely entered the region of the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. It was still advancing further. This dragon turtle, which had wandered in the vast void for countless years, had finally arrived in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, where there were cultivators. "We must stop it," said Lord Taishian. It was too dangerous to allow this to continue. No one knew which continent the dragon turtle would crash into. Once it did, the continent would be reduced to rubble. The dragon turtle was still moving forward. More cultivators rushed over to where they were. Many powerful existences had survived divine tribulations of the Great Path. They were also chasing after the dragon turtle. Above the Heavenly Mandate realm, two silhouettes suddenly appeared. They were Futian and Old Ma. The two of them glanced down and saw the shattered lands of the boundary of the heavenly mandate realm, as well as the terrifying fissures of the great path. Let's go. The two of them stepped forward and pursued the terrifying aura. Futian frowned. As expected, the thing he was worried about had occurred. The dragon turtle had actually descended upon the lands of the 3,000 realms of the great path. It had even shattered the boundary of the heavenly mandate realm and was moving further into the region. Divine light of space shone. Old Ma's speed was extremely fast as he traversed the space and chased after the aura. As they made their way over, Futian and Old Ma saw a broken continent. Countless rubble was floating in the space. More than half of the entire continent was consumed by dark fissures. When Futian saw this scene, and his heart was extremely heavy, the worst possible outcome had occurred. The dragon turtle had collided with a continent and shattered it. Finally, they sensed the terrifying aura ahead and knew that they were close. The two of them continued forward and finally saw the dragon turtle. Right then, in the space surrounding where the dragon turtle was traversing, many top cultivators appeared. Most of them were existences who had survived divine tribulations of the Great Path. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture, the Dark World, and the Empty Divine Realm were all present. They seemed to have reached an agreement and were preparing to join forces to stop the dragon turtle from advancing. It was not because the other forces pitted the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, but rather that allowing the dragon turtle to continue moving would make it more difficult to claim the ruined city on its back. It was best if they could trap it here and stop it in its tracks. In front of the dragon turtle, a heavenly bulwark seemed to appear. Tens of thousands of runes lit up. It was extremely dazzling. The dragon turtle crashed right into the bulwark. Cracks appeared on its surface. However, the next moment, a gate of world suppression appeared there. It was like an ancient door of the gods that could suppress everything in this world. Wangshan Watchtower also blocked the dragon turtle's path. Millet Emperor had appeared. Rumble. Terrifying rumbling sounds caused the space to tremble violently. Even the gate of world suppression was penetrated, and Wangshan Watchtower was knocked backward. However, the advance of the dragon turtle was beginning to weaken. After that, other cultivators appeared one by one. Various incredibly powerful figures had arrived. Emperor Shi and Renhuang Chun also attacked. This time, the cultivators of the three major realms were actually exceptionally united in their efforts to stop the dragon turtle. The dragon turtle began to slow down. It seemed sluggish. It let out a sorrowful cry. Followed by rumbling sounds, the dragon turtle finally came to a stop. In the void, it seemed as though an ancient ruined city had appeared out of thin air. From within the grave, the rhythm could be heard again. It contained an intense sorrow within it. The grave moved once again. The ancient corpses on it also floated up with it. It seemed as though the actions of the crowd had incurred the wrath of the grave. It appeared that there was indeed life within it. Futian stared straight ahead. He faintly sensed that this dragon turtle had not stopped because the others had blocked its path, but rather the power that drove it had caused it to stop. Otherwise, it would most likely still have been difficult for the various top cultivators to prevent the dragon turtle from advancing. Master said that the dragon turtle was seeking its way home. Could it be that the owner of the grave was making his way home? Chapter 2297. The Great Emperor is alive. After the dragon turtle came to a stop, at last, no more new dark fissures appeared. Everything gradually returned to being peaceful. However, in the void space, there was a ruined city floating about. In the void space around it, the cultivators stood staring at the ruined city. Ancient corpses emerged from the grave one by one as the rhythm played. It seemed to be controlling the movement of the ancient corpses. A few of the powerful ancient corpses were still around, standing in different locations. They stared wide-eyed at the surrounding cultivators. It was as though they themselves were cultivators who were still alive. These ancient corpses released extremely powerful auras. As the rhythm spread outwards, the ancient corpses began to move. They immediately pounced towards the surrounding cultivators. The power of each ancient corpse was comparable to that of a giant-level figure. "We must destroy them right away," someone said. These ancient corpses were originally lifeless. They could only be stopped by destroying them completely. Hmm. The various cultivators nodded their heads in agreement. This time, the cultivators from 3 major realms were gathered around here. All of them unleashed auras of the Great Path at the same time. For a moment, the power of the Great Path around them rampaged and was extremely frightening. As Futian, who was standing in the distance and did not attack, watched the situation over here. Even he could sense the suffocating pressure sweeping outwards. There was a gigantic tower that came crashing down while unleashing destructive golden divine halos, flattening and shattering everything. Sword rivers annihilated everything within the space. Long dark spears traversed across the darkness. Divine halos of space tore the space apart. In an instant, the attacks of the various cultivators that burst forth simultaneously blocked out the sky. The entire ruined city was blanketed within these attacks. None of the ancient corpses could escape the range of these attacks. The rampaging power of these attacks came crashing down like an apocalypse might. Huge rumbling noises could be heard. In an instant, the ancient corpses that were charging towards the cultivators were mostly destroyed. They were buried within the ruined city. They could not charge out even if they wanted to. Jet black fissures appeared in the chaotic space, not settling for a long while. Once everything returned to normal, many ancient corpses had already disappeared, having been completely annihilated. Only a few powerful ancient corpses remained standing there. The chaotic, destructive power did not manage to destroy them. These ancient corpses were powerful existences that could stand against figures at the level of Renhuangchen. In the grave, a light grew brighter and brighter. The rhythm also grew louder and louder. A loud bang could be heard as the grave burst open. A corpse stood on top of the grave. From within it, the formless rhythm surged non-stop into the corpse. It caused the corpse to be circled by halos of the Great Path. As the corpse stood there, a formless pressure swept out. It caused the various cultivators to stand around the ruined city to sense a terrifying pressure acting on them. Their gazes gradually became serious. The rhythm contained a unique power. It surged into the corpse that had appeared and caused the aura of the corpse to grow more and more powerful. Divine light actually circled around it, and the lifeless corpse seemed to be reborn into a body that was truly alive. Its hair was black as ink, and its skin became smoother. Its features became more defined, as though it had truly been resurrected. It was not just its features. From its body, halos of rhythm were released that circled around it and enveloped the other ancient corpses. The other corpses immediately lit up with beams of light. When the surrounding cultivators saw this scene, their expressions turned serious. Was this the Corpse King? It seemed that with him as the center, the surrounding corpses all came back to life. Where was this rhythm coming from? Why did it contain such power? It is a long-lost divine melody. I think I know who is buried within this grave, claimed someone. The gazes of the crowd immediately shifted towards the speaker. It was Lord Luo from Outer Violet Heaven, a master of a divine melody. This rhythm was a long-lost divine melody. The hearts of the various cultivators stirred. Divine melodies were created by great emperors. Only the melodies created by deity-like existences, such as great emperors, were qualified to be called divine melodies. The 9 great divine melodies were all passed down from ancient times. That meant to say that, as expected, the master in the grave of the ruined city on the dragon turtle's back was an ancient great emperor. Many people revealed contemplative looks. Some people seemed to have realized this. Their expressions changed instantly. Many people did not know about the mystery behind the divine melody. They could not help but ask, which divine melody is it? Who is buried within the grave? It is the divine requiem, said Lord Luo. It is the most sorrowful divine melody among the 9 great divine melodies. It was composed by a prominent figure in ancient times, Serene the Great. Once the divine requiem is played, the world will be cast into sorrow. It can control the emotions of others, and they will not be able to break free of its grasp. No wonder the cry of the dragon turtle was so sorrowful before this. Serene the Great. The hearts of the various cultivators trembled. This great emperor was also a figure who made it into the annals of history. In the legends, Serene the Great was a person who was true to himself. He was obsessed with the way of rhythm his whole life and cultivated it to its utmost limit. During his time, he was the top master of the way of rhythm. Otherwise, how could his divine requiem claim to cast the world into sorrow when played? How can it control these ancient corpses then? Someone asked. These ancient corpses seem to be controlled by the rhythm. Lord Luo explained, it is because this is not the true divine requiem. Shanin the Great was the top master of rhythm of his era. He was terrifyingly proficient in musical techniques. It is not unthinkable that he can control ancient corpses. I am more curious as to whether the grave contains more than just the will of Shanin the Great. His expression was stern. The surrounding cultivators also revealed strange expressions. They clearly understood what he meant by this. If only his will were present in the grave, how was it that it could activate the rhythm and control these corpses? It also seemed to be doing so as it pleased. However, if it was not just the will of the great emperor in the grave, what else was buried there? It was an astonishing line of thought. Lord Luo bowed towards the grave and said, Great Emperor, we stumbled upon this place in the void, so we wanted to explore it. We had no intention of disturbing you. When the surrounding cultivators heard Lord Luo's words, they were shocked. Lord Luo believed that the great emperor was still alive. How was this possible? If a great emperor from eons ago was still alive, why hadn't he appeared in the world sooner? Why did the dragon turtle need to wander in the void? If the great emperor was still alive, he could have killed them all with a flick of his hand. Why did he need to act in such a roundabout fashion? Lord Luo, I believe you are overthinking things, someone said. The other cultivators clearly did not believe this legendary figure from the ancient era had survived until the present day. If that were the case, it would be too astonishing. Lord Luo continued, Everyone, you seem to have forgotten the mysterious master of Four Corner Village. Nothing is impossible. After the collapse of the heavenly path, it was claimed that the gods had perished. However, can gods truly perish so easily? It might be that they exist in a different form in the world now. His words caused many people to frown. They seemed to have recalled something. Everyone ignored Lord Luo's words. There was movement in the grave aside from the rhythm playing. It surged into the various ancient corpses, especially the Corpse King. The Corpse King seemed to have come alive. A terrifying storm of rhythm emanated from his body and spread outward quickly. In an instant, the storm of rhythm enveloped the entire space. Everyone was within the domain of this rhythm. The rhythm was formless, yet its effect could be felt by all the cultivators present. The cultivators examined their surroundings. They could sense the omnipresent rhythm. Their eardrums vibrated with the rhythm. They formed some resonance with the music. It was as though their spiritual souls were invaded by it. Extreme grief welled up inside of them. They could feel despair and sorrow from deep within their souls. Beware. Many people reminded each other to be careful. The intense emotion mixed in the rhythm could directly affect the cultivators' souls, causing them to feel miserable. Sorrow, despair, helplessness, and the futility of struggling propagated along with the rhythm. These intense emotions directly impacted the cultivators, causing their mindfulness of the path to be swayed. It also lowered their combat abilities. Countless images that were related to their traumas surged in their minds. The traumas that each cultivator recalled were all memories that impacted their hearts and their souls the most. The negativity that they felt was magnified continuously, causing them to dwell in misery. It's the divine requiem. Lord Luo's emotions were similarly affected. At the same time, he was shocked by the might of the rhythm. This was the terror of the divine requiem. It would not attack the cultivators directly, yet it could perturb their mindfulness of the path and cause them to break down. Indirectly, it could destroy the cultivators. Humanity would dwell in sorrow as soon as the divine requiem was played. One could imagine how frightening this divine melody was. All the cultivators present had their own stories to tell. They had experienced countless tribulations to reach the peak of the Renhuang Plain. They had fortified their mindfulness of the path, and they were good at suppressing their emotions. Some of them even deserted all their feelings to achieve greater attainment in their way. Nevertheless, their experiences remained as memories in their minds. The divine requiem had the magical power to evoke those memories hidden in their minds. It would then amplify the negativity felt by the cultivators, causing them to wallow endlessly in sadness. It would destroy the will of a person. Even top figures would be affected by this. As to how powerful the effect would be, it depended on who was playing the divine requiem. It was the same for Futian. He thought that his mindfulness of the path and his conviction were firm. However, right now, his memories that had long been hidden were once again evoked. The scenes resurfaced in his mind and leaped into his consciousness. It was as though he had returned to the days of his youth. He saw his teacher and grandmaster. He even experienced the sorrow and despair he had felt back then once again. It was as though he had returned to the time when he was back at Sage Hall and experienced the death of Jeyu all over. The intense sorrow seemed to be magnified, causing grief from deep within his soul to emerge. It felt as though he had lost his ability to fight completely. This sensation was too frightening. He never imagined that the rhythm actually possessed such astonishing power. It could subdue its opponents without a fight, destroying its enemies through their emotions. "This won't do," a voice cried out from within Futian. He had to break free. Otherwise, he would be in grave danger. Setting aside the fact that the ancient corpses had not attacked, even if they didn't, his mind would gradually be worn out if he continued to be immersed in this endless sorrow until he was eventually crippled. Was the divine melody played by a true top figure actually this powerful? Who was playing it now? At that moment, he actually came to the same preposterous conclusion as Lord Luo. Could it be that the great emperor was actually still alive? Who else could play such a divine melody? Rumble. At that moment, the great path resonated on Futian's figure. His body became a divine body of the great path. The endless divine light of the great path circled around him. Musical notes burst forth from inside his body. These dancing musical notes intertwined to form a melody and countered the attack of the divine requiem. However, right then, the ancient corpses began to move. This time, they no longer attacked frantically like before. Instead, they were following the movements of the Corpse King. The figure of the Corpse King floated up into the air. He stood at the center of the storm of rhythm. He was circled by the endless storm. The other ancient corpses seemed to follow him and appeared around his figure. The Corpse King appeared like a truly extraordinary cultivator. He raised a finger, and immediately, the storm of rhythm in the vast space moved with his finger. Countless sword wills instantly appeared in the sky. These sword wills merged with the storm of rhythm. The humming of swords seemed to become a sorrowful wail. The hum of swords and the melody reverberated throughout the space. The other ancient corpses also did the same. The vast space was immediately enveloped by the sorrowful wail of swords. It was difficult for those caught in it to break free from its grasp. Buzz. The Corpse King lifted his finger and pointed at the cultivators. Immediately, myriads of humming swords appeared in the vast space. Each and every one of the swords was tainted with inexhaustible sadness. All the swords slashed towards the cultivators at the same time. The swords seemed to be capable of destroying one's spiritual soul. They were akin to the swords of great sorrow. A formless power was hidden within the swords as they charged towards the cultivators. All the top figures in the region were targeted by the swords. "Be careful," warned Renhuang Chun as his figure appeared beside Futian. Starlight illuminated and enveloped their surroundings. Futian and the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were shielded under the starlight screen. Rumble. Endless sword will descended and blasted on the starlight screen. The entire screen was covered with invading sword will. Futian and his group could clearly see how the sword will landed on the screen and caused it to shake violently. Cracks appeared on the screen. The terrifying melody permeated through the screen and affected the will of everyone. In other directions, cultivators from various top forces were also fighting hard to defend against the sword will. Even the giant-level figures felt threatened by the ferocious attack. Some people retreated frantically while some people sought protection from tribulation-level cultivators. Right at this moment, the ancient corpses dispersed. They moved simultaneously as they charged towards the cultivators in various directions. The Corpse King remained where he was. His gaze was devoid of emotion. He was a dead man, after all. Naturally, he wouldn't have any feelings. The Corpse King glanced in one direction. His gaze landed on a giant-level figure from the Divine Prefecture. Then, he raised his arm and sent out a palm strike from across the space. A gigantic palm immediately appeared in the heavens and earth. Even the gigantic palm was ringing with a sorrowful wail. This palm of great sorrow flew towards the cultivator. The cultivator retreated frenziedly. The sorrowful wail seemed to be omnipresent. It seeped into his mind and disturbed his emotions, causing him not to be able to focus and retaliate with his full force. At this moment, the palm of great sorrow slammed into him. With a loud bang, his spiritual soul was shattered. His body plummeted from the sky. He was killed instantly with a palm strike. Chapter 2299. The Great Emperor. Stand back, a voice called out. Various top cultivators backed down. Renhuang Chen, who was protecting the cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, also said, "Stand back for now. This Corpse King is terrifying." A giant-level figure had been killed with one blow so easily. The Corpse King's combat ability was astonishing. Cultivators who had not survived a divine tribulation would find it difficult to take a stand against the Corpse King. Even tribulation-level cultivators were having a hard time fighting him. "It is already too late," said Emperor Shi. A sorrowful wail could be heard all around them. They were all trapped in this domain of rhythm. The storm of rhythm that surrounded the vast space merged with the hum of swords and became a mournful wail of swords. It blocked out the sky and enveloped all the cultivators. In the ruined city, rhythm still floated out non-stop from within the grave towards the figure of the Corpse King. There were certainly secrets hidden within the grave. It was also highly likely that it was the secret to the divine requiem. Could it truly be as Lord Luo had speculated, and that the great emperor existed in a different form in the world now? If not, how could such a powerful rhythm be created? Seal off your senses. Do not let the rhythm affect you, someone reminded loudly. The grievous wails persisted. It directly affected the spiritual souls of the cultivators. The thick sense of sorrow pierced straight through to the hearts of the cultivators. If this continued, they would succumb to endless despair under the rhythm and would not be able to break free from its grasp. Many giant-level figures were already severely affected and had lost their will to fight. "Elder, may I trouble you to guard my body?" Futian asked. As he said this, his spiritual soul left his body and entered into the sacred remains of Shanjia, the great emperor. With his current plane in this domain, Futian could not withstand a single blow to his body. Right then, a suffocating pressure appeared in the heavens and the earth. The sorrowful, wailing sword will in the sky trembled. There was a loud rumble. Someone immediately shattered the domain and entered the area. Many people raised their heads and looked at the person who had arrived. Their hearts were trembling. Before this, cultivators from the various top forces had already informed their clans or forces to send over super cultivators who had survived the second divine tribulation. It seemed that someone had arrived. The Corpse King raised his head and swept a glance at the other party. He then raised a finger, and immediately Cold Sword will howled as it charged towards the other party. A frightening pattern of the Great Path appeared before the person who had arrived, blocking out the sky. When the sorrowful sword will stabbed forward, it actually sank straight into the pattern. Another extremely powerful aura descended and appeared above. Clearly, the second super cultivator had arrived. How could the relic of a great emperor appearing in the void realm not cause a commotion? Even the top super cultivators could not resist coming over to take a look to see whether there was a great emperor-level existence here. After a short while, in the surrounding void, many super cultivators appeared. These people were definitely rare sights to behold. They stood at the very top, high above everyone else. After the great emperor, they were the strongest existences. They were the backbone of their forces and controlled superpowers. An example was Taichu Saint Emperor. He was already a cultivator at the top of the pyramid and was the ruler of the Taichu domain. For cultivators of this level, their greatest obsession was the great emperor plane. However, it was almost impossible for them to reach this plane. Ever since the collapse of the heavenly path, how many great emperors had there been? No matter how talented these cultivators were, The great Emperor plane was always beyond their reach. After they arrived, they stared at these ancient corpses. Had these corpses been given life? Where was the rhythm coming from? As they pondered on this, they immediately stepped forward toward the grave. They wanted to see what secrets were hidden within. Were the remains of Serene the Great buried within this ruined city on the back of a dragon turtle? The ancient corpses around the grave charged towards the cultivators who were approaching them. Sword will howled sorrowfully and rained down. However, the people who had arrived this time were powerful existences. A cultivator from the dark world lifted a finger, and the ancient corpse charging towards him became a pile of shriveled bones. It disappeared gradually and turned to ash. Another cultivator slashed out with his own sword will. The space was instantly shattered, and everything in its path was annihilated. Even the space before him was shredded into pieces, let alone the corpses. They were immediately reduced to nothing. Another cultivator merely waved his hand, and the ancient corpses were disintegrated. This was the absolute suppression of planes. Once one reached this plane, the difference between each plane was insurmountable. Cultivators who survived the second divine tribulation could not be compared with those who only survived the first. The latter could be suppressed with a mere wave of a hand by the former. In an instant, most of the ancient corpses were destroyed. Only the Corpse King was left standing there. He was staring at the cultivators who were approaching him with his deep gaze. The Corpse King might have also been in existence who survived the second divine tribulation. Alas, he was but a corpse now. He couldn't wield the same level of combat ability as he did when he was still alive. He had been weakened greatly. It was most likely impossible for him to deal with these super cultivators by just activating the rhythm. Sorry for the offense. One of the cultivators apologized. He then lifted his hand and pointed a finger forwards. The space in front of him instantly collapsed and shattered. A frightening black hole appeared. This space could not withstand an attack of a cultivator of this level. A simple attack would cause the Great Path to collapse. The other cultivators also attacked at the same time, aiming their attacks at the Corpse King. Astonishing powers swept towards the figure of the Corpse King simultaneously. The crowd could predict what the outcome would be. The Corpse King would certainly be decimated by these attacks. At this moment, a menacing divine light surged from within the grave. The light transformed into the storm of rhythm which enveloped the Corpse King. Many attacks landed at the same time, flooding the entire space where the Corpse King was. However, after the destructive storm dissipated, the cultivators noticed that the Corpse King was still standing tall, unharmed by the attacks. An even more frightening aura permeated from his body. The light from within the grave surged into his body frenziedly. The surrounding cultivators frowned. The Corpse King was not eradicated even when faced with such attacks from the crowd. Furthermore, they could vaguely sense that the aura of the Corpse King was undergoing metamorphosis. It was becoming stronger. An unparalleled might emanated from the Corpse King, causing the cultivators to feel an overbearing pressure. It was the might of a great emperor. As expected, it was the aura of a great emperor. Could it be that the will of the great emperor was really hidden in the grave? Moreover, the user could control this might so freely. The thing hidden in the grave would most likely not just be the will of the great emperor. The hearts of all the cultivators quivered. Even those who had experienced the second divine tribulation found it hard to remain calm at this moment. Could it be that Serene the Great was really still alive? More and more cultivators found themselves believing the words of Lord Luo. Perhaps he was right. The great emperor might still be alive in another form. He might have even retained his consciousness. If that was the case, then the thing hidden in the grave was. A horrific rhythmic atmosphere diffused from the Corpse King and swept across the space without reserve. In an instant, heaven and earth were once again surrounded by rhythms and formed a domain dominated by it. Traces of musical rhythm burrowed into everyone's ears, probing into their spiritual souls. Even those powerful beings who had passed the second divine tribulation felt a shudder in their spiritual souls. Buzz. The fluctuations of the rhythm continued to spread from the Corpse King. It was as if his body was merely a conductor. In a brief moment, the vast land was enveloped by the will contained in the rhythm. The music of a song began to play, and every single beating note seemed to contain endless sorrow. The divine requiem. Lord Luo's expression was solemn. He had a look of piety. He then sat cross-legged directly in this void, listening very carefully. Although this divine requiem was terrifying, it was also a great blessing to personally experience the long-lost divine requiem. Furthermore, it was possible that this divine requiem was being performed by Shanin the Great himself. Even if he was not in human form, he existed in another form, playing this stunning divine tune. As a rhythmic cultivator, Lord Luo appreciated the opportunity to hear the divine requiem here, even if it meant that he must withstand terrible rhythmic attacks. He did not deliberately resist the attacks but allowed things to take their course, wanting to comprehend the fullness of the divine requiem. And because of his own cultivation and rhythm, he had stronger resistance than most. Of course, even if Lord Luo deliberately resisted it, it wouldn't do him much good. The divine requiem had shrouded the vast space and rang throughout this corner of the sky. It had wormed into everyone's ears and infiltrated their spiritual souls so that there was absolutely nowhere to hide. Those major figureheads who had retreated sat cross-legged, trying to shut down all their senses, but it was totally futile. Once the divine requiem started to play, that endless sadness quickly took hold of their minds, dragging them into a world created by the mood of dejection. So much so that they had forgotten where they were and were compelled to enter an atmosphere of extreme sorrow of their own making. As soon as the divine requiem sounded, the whole world grieved. As despondency percolated into this world, Futian sat cross-legged like most people. Although his spiritual soul was in the body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, it was still impossible for him to resist the invasion of the divine music. This rhythm was particularly good at invading the spiritual souls, and the strong sense of sadness took hold of him once again. It was a feeling of desperation, endless emptiness, and endless sorrow. This emotion was then amplified to the point that it could make anyone who heard it lose their mind. As if mired in quicksand, they immersed themselves in that extreme sadness, unable to extricate themselves until their will was completely eaten away. Even those strong cultivators who had survived the twofold divine tribulation were strongly affected. They looked at the corpse king in front of them while their own bodies were releasing a terrifying aura of the great path. They continued moving forward, intent on destroying the other. If they didn't, they would also be affected by the rhythm to the point of falling within that inescapable mood. However, as they moved forward, the rhythmic storm became even more frightening, engulfing their bodies and madly infiltrating their minds. A strong sense of grief was born involuntarily. It was as if they could no longer control their own will, but were controlled by that music. But the existence at this level had wills like iron that were hard to bend. Even in this state, they struggled to stretch out their hands, pointing at the body of the corpse king. A single arm was able to penetrate the rhythmic storm. It continued penetrating the storm little by little until that arm was in front of the corpse king, pointing directly at his physical body. In other directions, those who had survived the twofold divine tribulations also tried to touch the corpse king by any means possible. At this moment, the space had been completely torn apart and shattered, and there was no power to stop the madness of the storm or the collapse of that space. The extremely brilliant light and the light of darkness appeared at the same time. Then they saw the body of the corpse king began to disperse a little bit at a time, until it completely disappeared, destroyed. Is he dead? Everyone wondered after what they had seen. That's not quite right. Their expressions became alert, though their sadness remained. The rhythm had not dissipated, and it was just a corpse. Even if its physical form was destroyed, it didn't necessarily mean anything. Previously, the rhythm had been using his body as a medium to play the music. That top cultivator, who had reached the front, lowered his head to check out the tomb below. He saw wisps of rhythmic fluctuations that had begun to drift outward. As the man stepped out, a heavy pressure suddenly dropped down, causing cracks upon the tomb. It started to break apart in the middle. He wanted to see what was hidden inside the tomb. Even though everything that happened before was extremely uncanny, as if the great emperor had truly existed, he didn't believe that Shanin the Great was still alive. If so, how could he have allowed them to do what they had done here? Inside this tomb, there might be secrets that were yet unknown to them. Once the tomb was broken open, an ancient sarcophagus appeared inside. It was a pure white sarcophagus. The terrifying rhythm was coming from it, and even divine consciousness could not penetrate and scan it. This was enough to sober up several cultivators who had survived the twofold divine tribulation. They stared at this white sarcophagus. Was the body of Shanine the Great inside? If it was indeed the corpse of the great emperor, then where did this rhythm come from? And why was it able to be played here? Moreover, the music from the sarcophagus did not stop but became stronger instead, so that these top cultivators felt as if they were inside an illusion, that they, too, were about to fall into that deepest sorrow. Boom! The aura from them was shocking. They fixed their attention on the sarcophagus. In any case, they were determined to break it open and expose the secrets inside the sarcophagus. If the corpse of the great emperor was really inside, it might be the beginning of another bloody conflict. Like before, they moved toward the sarcophagus, but the bursts of energy from the great path dissipated immediately when they got near the sarcophagus. Just like before, they tried to launch their attacks at close range. Someone stretched out a hand and pointed at the sarcophagus. His body penetrated and entered the rhythmic storm. Someone else unleashed an amazing sword that pierced through the storm, all the way down. The attacks of these powerful cultivators in the original realm were enough to shatter heaven and earth and destroy the great path. However, they were under incomparable pressure. It was as if their attacks were blocked as they struggled to move forward. However, they were getting closer. Lord Luo opened his eyes and looked ahead. His heart was beating violently. It seemed that the sarcophagus was really about to be opened. He had speculated that the great emperor might have existed in another form, and that the behaviors of these cultivators were terribly disrespectful to the great emperor. If the great emperor truly existed in another form, no one would know what the consequences would be. However, these men were determined, and their minds were made up. It was impossible to stop them. Finally, someone's attack took hold and landed on the white sarcophagus. A cracking sound was heard. The sarcophagus began to crack. It didn't seem so difficult to break now. Bang! The ancient white sarcophagus exploded. At this moment, everyone's eyes were fixed on the contents inside. Chapter 23:01 Divine Guqin. All eyes were glued to the scene ahead. Even in the midst of the emotional struggle, they opened their eyes and stared. They wondered what was inside the tomb in the ruin that had been pulled by the dragon turtle. No one doubted that the will of the great emperor was here, and that it was Shanine the Great, the first man of music in ancient times. Then, was the corpse of Shanine the Great inside this white sarcophagus? Everyone stared at the broken sarcophagus and finally saw what was hidden inside. There was no corpse, no physical body of Shanine the Great, and no one else either. In the sarcophagus, the rhythmic storm continued raging, and the rhythm was originated from the strings of a guqin. Inside this white sarcophagus, there was only a guqin, one that seemed to be alive, capable of playing divine music by itself. The hearts of all the cultivators were beating quickly. A guqin that could play the divine music? What kind of guqin was this? And who was controlling the guqin? Furthermore, they could feel the will of the great emperor contained within the sounds of the music. Did this mean that this guqin contained the will of Shanine the Great? However, even if this guqin contained the will of Shanine the Great, why was it playing freely, as if it was alive? It even had the power to control those ancient corpses with the music. Could it be? As their thought turned to this, even those who had survived the second divine tribulation felt a great disturbance in their hearts. They stared at the guqin below and realized that there was only one possibility that could have led to such a situation. After Shanine the Great had perished, he might have incorporated his consciousness into this guqin, thus infusing the guqin with life force. Perhaps Lord Luo was right. The great emperor may have existed in another form, such as inside of this guqin, so that he was able to use this guqin to play the divine music. Just as they were considering this possibility, they saw that a few top cultivators had already made their move as they started grabbing at the instrument. This was a true divine item, one that might possess the will of a great emperor. If it could be controlled, what would that be like? However, as soon as they grabbed for the guqin, An extremely radiant divine brilliance erupted from it. It contained supreme coercion, radiating and falling directly on several powerful cultivators. Suddenly, these men were repelled backward, and no one was able to remain standing under that divine brilliance. Even the others who were in the distance felt the pressure of the great emperor that permeated in the sound of the guqin. Their hearts beat wildly as they saw the guqin flying up and floating in the air. The strings on the guqin kept moving, and the might of the emperor diffused from the guqin itself and covered the boundless space. At this moment, those top-notch cultivators actually had the urge to worship the guqin. It was as if that guqin represented the great emperor himself. The sound from the guqin increased its coercion. It was more penetrating than before, piercing into their spiritual souls. Finally, the dragon turtle let out a violent bellow. It seemed as if even the corpse of the dragon turtle was deeply affected by it. All the cultivators were immersed in despair and sorrow. They couldn't imagine how a person could perform such a sorrowful composition. What did Shanin the Great experience to cause him to compose the divine requiem? Futian felt the music a bit more deeply than the others. He was a student of the guqin and understood that the music represented a person's state of mind. The person who could compose something like the divine requiem must have gone through endless sadness and despair himself. For a great existence, such as Shanin the Great, who stood at the pinnacle of music, to have personally experienced such extreme grief was something unimaginable. The extreme sadness affected everyone's emotions, and the sadness only deepened. It was as if even the souls were crying out as well. The body of Shunjia, the great emperor, raised his head and looked at that beating guqin. Tears seemed to have stained the corners of his eyes. If one is immersed in this mood, what would it be like? Futian wondered. He was surrounded by the imperial will and was closely guarding his thoughts. But at the same time, he let loose of his emotions and no longer resisted. He allowed the sound of guqin to invade his emotions. Since it was impossible to resist, why not accept it and feel the true feelings the music was trying to convey? As the sound of guqin continued to spread, heaven and earth fell into endless sorrow. Even the great path seemed to be in grief. Similarly, the resistance of those major figures gradually weakened as more and more people quieted down. The aura of the great path upon their bodies gradually dissipated. Like Futian, they were slowly immersed in the sound of the guqin, unable to extricate themselves from its hold. One by one, they sank into the mood created by the guqin in endless sorrow. Only those who had survived the divine tribulation of the great path were still resisting, especially those who had survived the second divine tribulation. Their will was the most persistent, but even then, they were being affected profoundly. Their will was unrelenting, and they refused to surrender to the sound of the guqin. In their present state of cultivation, they were only one step away from the heavenly path. How could they be affected by the rhythmic path of the music? To them, this concept was unacceptable. Some continued to try to grab at the guqin. Several others also did whatever they could to try to obtain the guqin by force, using the supreme power of the great path to prevent the music from continuing. But those moving strings seemed to never stop, and round after round of sound waves swept out, making every movement extremely difficult to manage. When they got close to the guqin, radiant divine glory would bloom from it, like the might of the great emperor. It spread out with the sound of the guqin to suppress these cultivators. Every cultivator was incredibly tense as the strings continued to move, and another terrible imperial might descended upon them. Once again, those cultivators were knocked back again, and some couldn't help but let out a muffled groan. Although it was just a guqin, it seemed to be alive, and there was no way to capture it. Those top figures looked at the guqin that floated in the void, and their hearts trembled. It seemed that Shanin the Great might exist in this guqin in another form, giving it life. But even if strong cultivators like them coveted the item, they were unable to achieve it. Unless it was the guqin itself that allowed them access without resistance, it could not be done. A storm of rhythm shrouded this vast space, and everyone seemed to quiet down. The aura of the great path they released gradually dissipated. One may see that there were traces of tears in many top cultivators' eyes. The whole world seemed to be immersed in despair and sorrow. Even the air was filled with sadness. The dragon turtle's sad bellowing was heard at this moment. As it cried, the dragon turtle moved again. Accompanied by the violent sounds, the dragon turtle set off again to smash through those previous defenses. It gradually accelerated along with the sound of the guqin. It was as if it were still looking for a way home as it had done before. This time, the bellowing continued and persisted, resounding in this endless space in the void. It seemed that the whole world was filled with endless sorrow. The dragon turtle set off. Rumbling sounds rolled across the void. Spatial cracks appeared between heaven and earth, and the sound of sad bellowing that came from the dragon turtle seemed to draw tears from the others as well. Even sadder was the divine requiem. Upon the immense body of the dragon turtle, that city of ruin formed a field dominated by the music of the great path. All the cultivators were trapped within it, including those who had survived the divine tribulation of the great path. They, too, were mired in the sorrowful mood of the divine requiem, falling into sadness so absolute that they were unable to escape by themselves. Those who had survived the second major divine tribulation had the strongest resistance, but they could not take hold of the guqin. Gradually, the sound of the guqin invaded their minds, sending them into the mood of absolute sadness. This absolute sadness overwhelmed even the strongest of wills and crushed them. Unless a cultivator could strip away his own emotions and desires, he would not be able to break free from this music played by the great emperor. No matter how strong anyone's cultivation was, they had fallen into that feeling. Gradually, apart from the sad bellows of the dragon turtle, the space became extremely quiet except for that desolate, sorrowful sound from the guqin. Futian had already fallen into this sadness and knew that he could not and did not resist the sound of the guqin. Instead, he had allowed himself to go with the flow and immersed himself in it. He wanted to see if this sadness could destroy him, but he also wanted to see what was hidden in this extreme sorrow. Because of his musical cultivation, he knew that every musical sound had its own meaning. He wanted to really feel the mood of Shenin the Great when he was playing the guqin and see why Shenin the Great was able to compose such sad music. After entering into that mood, the sorrow hidden deep in Futian's heart seemed to be coaxed out all at once. From his childhood until today, even those long-forgotten memories now surfaced in his own mind, accompanied by that music of extreme sadness. All his emotions seemed to be replaced by sadness. Nothing else and no other emotions mattered anymore. He seemed to have returned to the past, directly entering into the memory of bygone ages. He saw Hua Fenlio's cultivation being abolished, Jieyu's death in the battle, and when the imperial advisor of Dali released him as he walked away. All the sorrows of his past came to mind. His feelings were magnified even more to the point that he was unable to free himself. It was as if he could no longer escape. The tears on his face flowed freely, unbeknownst to him. Those eyes were no longer bright, but were empty and hollow, occupied only by sadness and desperation. He looked just like the living dead. Futian had forgotten everything else and what he wanted to do. Perhaps he had not expected to sink so deeply into the mood. And it was not just him. Everyone had fallen into it, including those who had gone through the divine tribulation. In those long years of cultivation, everyone had tons of stories from the past that were emotional to them. Normally, the things that they had experienced were suppressed so that it would not affect their emotional balance. But no one could escape the influence of this divine requiem. No matter how powerful one's cultivation was, anyone, as long as they owned all their human emotions and desires, would be affected by it. If this scene were witnessed by people on the outside, it would have been absolutely stunning. Of the three major worlds, the divine prefecture, the dark world, the empty divine realm, many were existences at the peak. They all had tears in their eyes. They had all fallen into this sadness, and it was a sight so rare it might not occur even every 1,000 years. In the quiet space, the guqin that contained the will of the great emperor floated in the void. The strings were moving on their own, playing this divine song with endless sorrow. It seemed as if there was no end in sight. The dragon turtle continued moving forward in the void, and dark cracks appeared one by one as if to bring everyone into endless darkness, into eternal exile. Behind Futian, The cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were lost as well. Old Ma's face was full of tears. He thought about the death of little Ling's parents. That unforgettable sadness was the eternal pain in his heart, no matter what cultivation level he had reached. It would always be hidden within the depths of his memory, but at this moment, it was thoroughly unleashed. Everyone had different kinds of sadness, but the ending was similar without exception. All the cultivators were caught up in that desolation. Time went by fast, and no one knew how long it had been. Futian, trapped in that extreme sadness, suddenly sensed a trace of consciousness awakening inside him. He seemed to have entered a very mysterious mood. The sadness was still there. It didn't dissipate, and he was still immersed in it. However, there seemed to be a consciousness there. An inexplicable force seemed to affect him, or he seemed to perceive the deep feelings contained in the sorrowful music. Although he had his eyes closed, everything in front of him was so clear. At the same time, it was so elusive and unpredictable. The guqin that was floating in front of him was no longer just the guqin itself. Before the guqin, a figure of peerless elegance appeared. The man looked to be about 30. He clad in clothes purer than snow. He had a temperament that was out of this world. Seeing the appearance of this figure, Futian's heart skipped a beat. It was as if a thought was pulling him back from all that sadness. Was this an illusion? In front of the guqin, a figure appeared. The guqin didn't seem to be playing by itself, but was played by this man. However, no one else was able to see him except for Futian. This is not an illusion. A voice sounded inside Futian's head. This was definitely no illusion, but that he had truly entered the mood and perceived the sight in front of him, as well as the existence of the great emperor. As Lord Luo had said, Shenin the Great continued to exist in another form. His life was integrated into this guqin, and he became one with it. This guqin was definitely not just as simple as an instrument and definitely not as simple as containing a trace of the great emperor's will. Is it the great emperor? A voice came asked. It was Futian's. It was a voice from his soul. The great emperor of ancient times from countless centuries ago. It was the first man of music. Did his life persist to this day? If so, in what form did Shenin the Great exist? After Futian spoke, he waited quietly, as if for the other man to respond. Time seemed to flow exceptionally slowly. Then the sound of a sigh came out that seemed to contain endless sadness. With just a sigh, Futian was once again brought back into that absolute grievous feeling. However, this sigh caused Futian's heart to beat wildly. It was as if all his previous speculations were confirmed. Lord Luo was right after all. The great emperor had really prevailed. Chapter 2303, The Obsession of Shenin the Great. After the great emperor let out a sigh, there were no other sounds. He plucked the strings again, playing that sorrowful divine requiem. The sound of the music lingered, but the endless sadness remained. Those who were drawn into it were unable to extricate themselves, and even Futian's soul felt that tremendous sadness. However, but he gradually perceived a feeling in all of that sadness, which was exactly what he had been seeking in the sound of the guqin. He was an expert in music and understood that the rhythm of the music was originated from the heart. Behind every rhythm, there was a story, a feeling it tried to convey. When he plunged himself into this, it was with the intent to feel, to discover what was hidden in the divine requiem. What exactly did Shenin the Great experience to compel him to compose such despondent music? Even when it was lost, it was still remembered by later generations and included in the roster of divine compositions. With the sound of the music, Futian seemed to be getting many bits and pieces of information. What he saw in his mind's eye did not seem to be too clear. It was somewhat elusive, like a story intertwined with many scenes that were now projected in his mind. Futian didn't do anything deliberately, but continued to immerse himself in the sound of the music to feel. He already knew that he perceived the mood. He was almost able to see the origin of the divine requiem. The picture in his head gradually became clearer. With the sound of the guqin, Futian's consciousness seemed to have entered into another time and space, as if he no longer had any consciousness of the self, but was now completely immersed in the mood. With clarity, Futian could see two people. One was an elegant scholar, sophisticated and handsome. The other was a woman, beautiful and sunny, with a charming smile and a gorgeous face. Although this scholar was very young, one could vaguely discern Serene the Great as a young man. At that time, he was not yet so authoritative or majestic, and he did not have a strong aura. He was more like an innocent young master who exuded a delightful temperament. In these pictures, Futian saw the two learning to play guqin together from the same master, who seemed to be a very powerful individual in music. The two of them learned guqin together. Gradually, they got to know each other and fell in love. Where they were, there was a peach tree grove that was exceptionally beautiful. The peach blossoms covered the ground just like something from a dream. They played music together and composed guqin music. This particular scene felt extraordinarily wonderful. The two were like a golden couple, and their master was very kind to them. He instructed them in cultivation and witnessed their growth and their love. Pieces of their lives were played out quickly, jumping here and there, and they sailed in front of Futian's eyes. The two had experienced many things together, falling in love, loving each other, experienced separation, frustration, and reunion. They had gone through a lot together. In some of the scenes, the two had also experienced many major events. Futian saw the continuous growth of the young scholar in white. He saw that he had caused bloodshed within an entire clan for the sake of his beloved, and that his lethal music had slaughtered thousands. In the wake of the pile of bones that had accumulated, he left with the woman. Many similar scenes ensued. During their times together, there were too many stories. Gradually, both of them had cultivated to a very high level, and their musical attainments were getting stronger as their status elevated with it. However, every few years, they would return to where they cultivated and play music together under the peach blossoms. They would take a pot of wine to visit their master, drink with him, and view the peach blossoms together. Among those countless events, this one seemed to be repeating the most, as if it was the most important thing in his life. No matter what realm he cultivated to, and no matter how many difficulties he had been through in life, he would always return to the place he was from. Finally, the world changed, and it became heavy and oppressive. The scholar in white was no longer the same scholar in white of yesteryears, but a world-renowned existence. Countless people wanted to cultivate under his tutelage. He had reached the top and became a supreme existence himself. In that era, it seemed a bit easier to cultivate, and there were many supreme existences. When the world was going through great changes in those years, he went through many tremendous wars, but there were not many scenes of these wars. Most of what's been revealed were still those of him with his beloved. Until one day, there was something about the battle of the gods. In that battle, heaven and earth disintegrated, and the world collapsed. The entire world began to fragment as the great path fractured. Everything was on the verge of total destruction. It was a disaster for the entire world. And the scholar in white didn't seem to have participated in the battle until the clan he belonged to was shattered. The peach tree grove turned into scorched earth, and his most respected master also perished. Out of anger, he finally joined the war. However, this battle resulted in the death of his beloved woman. In his extreme pain and sorrow, he cast a white sarcophagus for her. However, in the coffin, the woman turned into a guqin, wanting to accompany him forever, fighting with him in every battle. So, with the help of this guqin, he composed that stunning music, the Divine Requiem. When the Divine Requiem was heard, the whole world grieved. But in the end, he still couldn't alter fate. The heavenly path collapsed, the world was shattered, and Serene the Great himself almost died in the battle. Before his demise, he incorporated his life force into the guqin and turned it into the soul of the guqin. It seemed to him that the two of them would be together forever, entombed within that white sarcophagus. When all these scenes disappeared from his head, Futian finally understood where the guqin came from. It turned out that this guqin was the final resting place of two supreme cultivators, Serene the Great and his beloved girl. He finally understood why this dragon turtle was pulling a sarcophagus, moving aimlessly in the void. And he finally understood why the dragon turtle was making those sad bellowing. Everything was because of that guqin. The teacher said that they were looking for a way home. However, the heavenly path had collapsed, and the old world, destroyed. How could they find the way home? Futian couldn't help but be reminded of that peach tree grove. The teacher of Shenin the Great and the happy times Shenin the Great spent with his beloved while learning the Guqin together in the peach tree grove. The beautiful times he spent together with his teacher drinking, chatting, and playing music. Even when he had reached the top, his original intention never changed. He returned often and did the same thing. He was indeed someone who was true to his heart. Perhaps it was because of this that he proved the supremacy of the way and became the great emperor, the first man of music. Futian knew where the home was referred to by the dragon turtle. It was the peach tree grove. This, too, was the obsession of Shenin the Great. He wanted to take his beloved to return to the peach tree grove once again. However, this seemed to be an impossible dream that was destined never to be fulfilled. The world before the collapse of the heavenly path and the world today were no longer the same. Chapter 2304, Take Me Home. Futian was overtaken by the atmosphere created by this Guqin. It was from the sadness he experienced before. It seemed as if every note was no longer just a simple note, but a feeling, a scene from the life of Shenin the Great. His most respected teacher, his favorite hometown, and his most beloved woman were all lost in that great battle. If he had reached the peak of realms, what of it? He was so hopeless that he finally fell into total despair and composed the Divine Requiem, a composition that was known throughout the world. However, the outcome was that he too became part of that Guqin. Those lively notes imprinted in Futian's mind as the rhythm became clearer. Suddenly, a Guqin appeared in front of him, which was transformed by the divine wheel of the great path. The strings of the instrument moved, and every note seemed to be filled with immense sorrow. Each beating note seemed to resonate with the divine requiem. Futian seemed to be playing the divine requiem. Some experiences of Shenin the Great's lifetime bore shocking similarities to Futian's. The two men resonated emotionally. However, even though he had fallen into that boundless dejection before, Futian seemed to have escaped from it at this moment. Not quite a true breakaway, but he was able to reach beyond the emotion of sadness and had come to a place of acceptance, which was also the feelings conveyed by the divine requiem. Only the person who had gone through the progression of these feelings could compose this divine requiem. And Futian seemed to have understood something and was doing exactly that. Although the notes he played were far from the true divine requiem, the feelings were there so that the notes he played were integrated into the atmosphere of the divine requiem, as if resonating with it. Gradually, Futian's music became much more skilled, and his sense of sorrow became even stronger. He was still immersed in the endless sadness, but his consciousness was quite lucid, surpassing the emotions he was feeling. As the music played, countless invisible currents surrounded Futian's person. In front of the Guqin transformed by the great emperor, an elusive phantom sat quietly there. It seemed to be looking up at Futian at the moment. It was as if he embodied a complete life force, like he were truly Shenin the Great. What century is it now? A questioning voice drifted into Futian's ears, making his heart shudder. The great emperor had spoken. Although Futian had been in contact with the will of great emperors before, aside from Emperor Qing, this was only the second time that he had really seen a great emperor who was fully conscious. He was speaking to him. Elder, it is now the age of the divine prefecture. It has been more than 10,000 years, Futian replied. After hearing his answer, the figure fell into deep silence for a while, then let out a sigh. His eyes drifted to a place far away, then back down at his Guqin. He had turned into a Guqin, drifting about for countless years, and he had lost count of what year or age it was. Where is home? The sound of a deep sigh was heard. It seemed that Shenin the Great knew that he was without a home. His hometown had long been destroyed. His master and his beloved were no longer there. Everything existed only in his mind, a construct of his persistence. After the collapse of the heavenly path, the world has changed. This is the original realm. After the collapse of the heavenly path, the world is no longer stable. Futian responded, the hometown that you seek, perhaps, no longer remains. He didn't lie to him. Futian was being as honest as he could be. No matter how stubborn Shenin the Great was, holding on to the idea of home, It was nothing but wishful thinking. There was another moment of silence. The phantom of Shanin the Great looked at Futian and asked, "Who are you? And why are you in control of the body of Shunjia, the great emperor?" Clearly, he had recognized that this divine body belonged to Shinjia, the great emperor. "I am Futian, the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy in the original realm, as well as the palace lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace in Ziwei Segmentum. I acquired the body of Shunjia, the great emperor, by chance and resonated with it. This caused the scene seen by the elder," Futian responded. Shanin the Great scrutinized him a little more closely. In short, Futian had already received the inheritance of two great emperors. Ziwei Segmentum, the palace lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace. "Does Ziwei the Great still exist?" asked Shanin the Great. Ziwei the Great had already perished when the heavenly path collapsed, but he had left behind a will to seal up the entire Ziwei Segmentum. Not long ago, the seal was broken, and Ziwei Segmentum was connected to the outside world once again. The will of Ziwei the Great remains in the starry sky world and was inherited by me, Futian continued. Shanin the Great cast another look at Futian, and that look seemed to contain deep suggestions. Not only did this man possess the inheritance of the two top great emperors, controlling the physical body of Shunjia, the great emperor, but he had also inherited the will of Ziwei the Great. In addition, he was proficient in music, enough to comprehend the true meaning of the divine requiem. He was able to enter the world of his feeling. Indeed, he was truly an extraordinary individual. No wonder he could play the notes that resonated with the divine requiem and see everything that was in front of him. "Sir, there is nothing ahead. The original realm is no longer the world it used to be. The hometown that you used to know is long gone. I hope that you can let go of your persistence to return to a place that no longer exists," Futian said as he bowed. If they continued, the dragon turtle would keep going and inevitably impact the surface of other realms, destroying them. The worlds in the lower world could not withstand the force of the dragon turtle. They would collapse immediately. Futian could only persuade Shanin the Great to let go of this stubbornness, as Shanin the Great was the only one who could prevent this disastrous scenario from happening. Other cultivators, even those powerful enough to survive the second divine tribulation, had fallen into that endless sorrow in the music. They were completely unable to stop the dragon turtle's forward momentum. The way ahead has ended. Where's the way back?" Shanin the Great murmured. His casual sigh seemed to contain a strong sense of loss. He wanted to find a way home, but there was no road ahead. Where was the way home? If he could not find the way back, where would he go? "I pledge to find a grove of peach trees for you, sir, and bury the Guqin when the peach blossoms are in full bloom," Futian continued. Shanin the Great looked at him now and saw from his eyes that he was truly sincere. The Guqin could communicate and know the hearts of men. Perhaps Futian could perceive his existence through the divine requiem and understood his feelings. This proved that they were of the same kind and that this young man in front of him bore some similarities to him. Shanin the Great took one more look at Futian. Divine lights appeared upon his body, shining directly upon Futian. The light penetrated Futian's brow chakra. It bore into Futian's mind and consciousness. Shanin the Great seemed to be connected to Futian somehow. After a while, the divine lights dissipated, and the way that Shanin the Great was looking at Futian seemed to have changed. "Perhaps everything in this world is destined," Shanin the Great murmured to himself. He then said to Futian, "I will lend you this Guqin for 300 years, until the day when higher heights can be reached in the future. Take me home now." "Take you home?" Futian looked at Shanin the Great, a little puzzled. His home had disintegrated long ago and no longer existed. How were they going to go back? Chapter 2305. Going to Ziwei Segmentum. Shanin the Great wanted to lend him the Guqin for 300 years. Judging from the words spoken by the great emperor, it seemed that he had some expectation of him. Had Shanin the Great detected anything from him? Why did the great emperor think that Futian could take him home? Futian didn't quite understand, but he heard Shanin the Great continue, "I'll take you back first." "Where to?" "Let's go to Ziwei Segmentum," said Futian. The great emperor had lent him the divine Guqin, and many top cultivators were here watching them. Only in Ziwei Segmentum could they stop the coveting of these people, or at the very least, give them some time to cool down. Very well, Shanin the Great agreed. Suddenly, a terrible rumbling sound came out, and the dragon turtle turned around and actually headed in the opposite direction. It was moving incredibly fast as it sped through the void and went back the same way it came. Great waves appeared on the Guqin. Cultivators were knocked off of the back of the dragon turtle. When they were knocked off from the city's ruins, the rhythmic storm on the back of the dragon turtle gradually dissipated as well, but that strong sense of sorrow remained. Futian freed himself from the previous feelings and looked at the divine Guqin floating in the void in front of him. He felt that everything was a little surreal, like a dream, extremely curious. The divine Guqin floated upon him as strands of divine glory penetrated his brow chakra and seemed to have made a certain connection with him. Futian felt a sense of familiarity. He stretched out his hands and stroked the strings. This was the divine Guqin transformed by Shanin the Great and his beloved. It had embodied their emotions for a lifetime, as well as their endless sorrow. "Sir, what should be the name of this Guqin?" Futian asked. "You name it." The voice of Shanin the Great sounded in his mind. "Let's call it Yearning," said Futian. Shanin the Great was silent for a moment, then agreed, "Very well." This Guqin was then named Yearning. As for those top figures who were knocked off by the dragon turtle, they gradually regained their consciousness. All of them were powerful cultivators and could recover themselves after they came out of the sorrowful mood. Even so, they still felt an extreme sorrow deep inside their hearts. It was as if the sadness had been seared in their souls and could not be erased. Perhaps some things still needed one's own willpower to defeat it. The dragon turtle, they looked at the sky above and scanned across the sky with their divine consciousness. Then, one by one, they stepped into the void, chasing after the dragon turtle. Secretly, they were a little shocked. The dragon turtle had gone in the opposite direction. This seemed impossible. However, when they caught up with the dragon turtle, they saw a figure standing on its back, a man with white hair and white clothing. It was Futian. This made those top figures even more shocked. Him again? How many times was this? The cultivators from the Shangqing domain felt especially puzzled. From Shunjia the Great Emperor to Ziwei the Great, and now Shanin the Great, why did it have to be him again? On the back of the dragon turtle, only Futian was there. Did this mean that Futian had been recognized by Shanin the Great as well? What kind of existence exactly was this guy? Futian looked at Ren Huangqian and the others. He nodded slightly at them. Ren Huangqian and the others stepped out one after another, arriving on the back of the dragon turtle, moving next to Futian. There was shock in their hearts as well. All of them were trapped in that deep sorrow before. But had this been when Futian contacted Shanin the Great and gained his recognition? Lord Luo was amazed. He made extraordinary musical attainments himself and was already a giant-level figure. However, he was unable to perceive the sentiment within the divine requiem. Futian must have done it. Otherwise, he could not possibly stand on the dragon turtle now. He always believed that the great emperor was still around, existing in one form or another. Perhaps he had been integrated into that Guqin, or else it would have been impossible for it to possess such power. So now, it should be the great emperor who had chosen Futian. After Ziwei the Great, the inheritance of yet another extraordinary great emperor. This white-haired young man seemed to collect more and more halos along the way. As for the other top cultivators, they each had their own ideas. They had seen the Guqin in front of Futian. This Guqin was definitely a divine Guqin, a divine item, and it was able to play the divine requiem independently. It made them sink so deeply into it that they were unable to extricate themselves. Now, it was obtained by Futian. Where is the dragon turtle going? They stared in the direction of the dragon turtle and noted that it was where the dragon turtle had come from. However, now it was going on the way back. Where did it want to take Futian and the others? None of the top cultivators acted rashly, but followed the dragon turtle instead. Obviously, they still had lingering fears about what had happened before. They were worried about offending the will of Shanin the Great and that the divine requiem might resound again. It had been proven previously that no one could resist the divine requiem. No matter their realm of cultivation, all would fall for it. The dragon turtle continued moving through the void, continuing forward, passing through the surfaces of many realms. Many cultivators of the surface who witnessed the sight in the void could not help but felt greatly disturbed in their hearts. Lord Luo and other cultivators who were acquainted with Futian also stepped onto the back of the dragon turtle and came to Futian's side. Lord Luo looked at Futian and said, "Congratulations are in order." Futian clearly understood what the congratulations were for. Elder's insight was far more impressive, responded Futian. Lord Luo was the first person to recognize that the great emperor might exist in another form, and he had shown great respect to the tomb previously. Even those whose realms were higher than him, including the existences that had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path, were not as accurate as he had been. "You saw the great emperor?" Lord Luo asked Futian via voice transmission. Obviously, he had his suspicions, though he didn't ask directly, opting to communicate through voice transmission. Futian did not deny it. "In the depths of the music, I met Serene the Great." Lord Luo's look at Futian was full of meaning. Although he had guessed it, he was still a little shocked when he heard that Futian had seen the great emperor. To meet the great emperor in the sounds of Guqin was also what he had desired. Unfortunately, it was not meant to be. Time passed as the dragon turtle shuttled through the space in the void, drove through immense space, until it was separated from the domain of the 3,000 realms of the Great Path and headed into deep space. This caused those top figures to wonder. They had been following without making any moves, wanting to see where the dragon turtle was going. At this moment, some people seemed to have realized something. "He is going to the starry sky world," a top figure said, following Futian to Ziwei Segmentum. Futian would be able to borrow the power of Ziwei the Great in that territory. Once the dragon turtle took the Guqin of Serene the Great to the Ziwei Segmentum, no one could overtake Futian. Futian seemed to be in complete control of Serene the Great and his will. Could he control the dragon turtle in whatever direction it went? Chapter 2306, Giving Up? Shall we strike? All the cultivators secretly asked themselves. The dragon turtle was taking Futian and the Guqin of Serene the Great to Ziwei Segmentum. If they delayed making a move on Futian, they would have no opportunity when Futian was in the Ziwei Segmentum. But again, who among them could be sure that they had the ability to deal with the Guqin itself? These top figures hesitated. This Guqin was a real divine item. The strings could move by themselves and play the divine requiem, which ensnared all the top cultivators in that endless sadness. If it could be obtained and controlled, what kind of power would that be? What was more, they had not yet unearthed the secret of Serene the Great, but Futian may have already done exactly that. A top cultivator from the dark world couldn't wait any longer and struck. He raised his hand to grab at the dragon turtle. Suddenly, a terrible black hole of death appeared in the void, swallowing up everything. This black hole caused a huge vortex to appear in this space. The forward speed of the dragon turtle seemed to be affected as rumbling sounds of horror were heard. This space started to collapse madly. It was as if it was about to shatter completely into nothingness, and the dragon turtle, too, would be swallowed into that darkness. Previously, those who had survived the second divine tribulation of the Great Path had walked directly onto the back of the dragon turtle, wanting to snatch the Guqin. They were attacked by the music and were ensnared in its throes. The fact was that their supreme strength combined was terrifying enough that they could hamper the forward movement of the dragon turtle. Upon seeing this, that Guqin in Futian's arms flew out. It was as the strings were moving by themselves again. A horrific storm of rhythm swept at that top cultivator from the dark world. The invisible rhythmic ripples seemed unstoppable, directly invading the other's mind. In an instant, the sadness that had not completely dissipated rushed into his heart again. The face of the cultivator from the dark world changed. The music from Guqin was still playing, but his figure retreated in a flash, abandoning his attempt to strike. Everyone stared at the Guqin ahead, and it seemed that Lord Luo was right. This Guqin did indeed contain a life force. Coupled with the coercion of the great emperor in its music, It seemed that Shanine the Great indeed existed in yet another form in this world. Otherwise, it would be impossible to explain the phenomenon. It was as if the spirit of Shanine the Great was at work. Did Yi Futian perceive the existence of Shanine the Great? Many cultivators wondered. At this moment, someone else made another move. An extremely tyrannical cultivator from the empty divine realm slashed through the void with his palm, and cracks appeared between heaven and earth. It created a space of exile that swallowed up the road in which the dragon turtle was moving. Instantly, the dragon turtle, which was moving forward, was swallowed up as well. Exile. Yi Futian's eyes sharpened. Judging from his opponent's realm, he could easily destabilize the great path of the original realm, banishing them into a world of nothingness, even opening up a channel to the divine prefecture. Clearly, they were aware that the others wanted them to leave the original realm to be unable to move forward into the starry sky world in Ziwei Segmentum. The cracks in the space expanded, resembling an entrance to darkness, engulfing the gigantic dragon turtle along with the entire ancient city of ruins in tow. Yi Futian and the others instantly entered this unstable spatial crack or the great path. Inside was chaotic and disorderly. This was a land of banishment. It existed only when the space of the original realm was broken, but this place could also lead to the divine prefecture. The dragon turtle moved forward in the dark, but the same rhythm persisted as if guiding its direction. Accompanied by some violent roars, the dragon turtle navigated forward in the crevices of the void, then shuttled around and returned to the land of the original realm. However, along its path, the dark cracks became more and more terrifying, tearing the space apart. In this instant, the ginormous body of the dragon turtle was already in another remote place, much further away, as cultivators chased them from behind. Their expressions were solemn. It seemed that no matter what they did, this dragon turtle would continue to elude them. Elders, let's stop here. If the rhythm is still playing as before, please ask yourselves, if you could, would you retreat under your own power? Yi Futian said loud and clear, the great emperor doesn't care to tarry with all of you like this, but if you insist on this foolery, perhaps you will feel the anger from the great emperor himself. All the cultivators who heard what Yi Futian had to say were stunned, and a great conflict ensued in their hearts. Yi Futian seemed to have indicated that Shanine the Great was still here, alive, existing in the world in another form. He had autonomous consciousness. He could attack them if they continued to be unruly. The great emperor would take action. There was a thoughtful look in their eyes. It was as if they were contemplating the veracity of Yi Futian's words. But in conjunction with everything that happened before, they realized that Yi Futian might not have been lying to them. What he said was probably the truth. The great emperor was still here. Otherwise, none of this made any sense. The great emperor was still here. With the first man of music in ancient times here, how dare they try to seize the Guqin? Since the great emperor had already made his own choice, it would be meaningless no matter what they did. It was a foregone conclusion that could no longer be changed. Give up? Many cultivators wondered. In fact, those giants who had not overcome the divine tribulation had already given up. In their previous experience of all that had happened, they knew that it was futile. It was already a great favor bestowed on them to allow them out of that grievous mood. So what other ambitions could they speak of at the moment? Not to mention that as long as there were other tribulation-level cultivators around, it was far from their turn yet. Just as everyone was considering the matter, the dragon turtle marched forward and drove through the boundless void. Over time, the starlight fell from the sky. It seemed as if they had now entered the territory of Ziwei Segmentum. At this time, some cultivators stopped and did not continue their pursuit. Later, more people stopped moving forward. As they stopped one by one, they looked further down the road that the dragon turtle was on. They knew that there was no more hope. All they could do was watch the dragon turtle take the Guqin, Yi Futian, and the others inside the Ziwei Segmentum. In a nutshell, the dragon turtle appeared with the ancient ruins of a city in tow, and Yi Futian was ultimately the only one who benefited from it. For Yi Futian to be the one to take the inheritance of Shanine the Great, what else could anyone say or do? With such a genius talent to exist in the land of the original realm, divine prefecture, the dark world, and the empty divine realm would not be quiet for long. Sooner or later, the cultivators in those worlds would meet him somewhere, somehow. "Let's go," someone said, then turned to leave. After that, many powerful cultivators left one by one. There was no point in staying here any longer. They had already entered Ziwei segmentum. What else could they do now? After they left, the dragon turtle descended on Ziwei Imperial Star. Soon, the news began to spread wildly in the original realm. Futian, the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy and the palace lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, had obtained the inheritance of yet another great emperor after Shunjia the Great Emperor and Ziwei the Great. Chapter 2307, Changes in Original Realm. Starry Sky World. Ziwei Cultivation Court. Beneath the boundless starry sky, Futian sat cross-legged in a quiet location. Surrounded by stars, Futian, who was fully bathed in the starlight, seemed extremely holy. In front of him lay the guqin that he named Yearning. At this moment, traces of rhythmic divine light continuously wafted out from the instrument, connecting with Futian at his brow chakra so that his entire body was enveloped by the rhythmic divine light. In his mind, more and more memories presented themselves, and most of them were connected with music. Music scores and the moods contained in each piece of the music. Serene the Great was the first man of music in his era. His attainments in music were so superior that few in history could be named along with him, either in ancient times or modern. Naturally, he was not only known for the Divine Requiem. The Divine Requiem was a shocking composition created after his own experience of great sorrow. However, even before that, he was already a master of countless pieces of music, some of which were extremely powerful, and their influence was not much weaker than that of the Divine Requiem. Now, Serene the Great was ready to pass on all this to Futian when he regained consciousness again. He promised Futian the guqin for 300 years. In return, Futian would escort him home. Although Futian was still unclear on the actual meaning of these words from Serene the Great, he was not about to pursue them if the great emperor himself didn't deign to clarify. For him, the priority was to focus on his own cultivation. Now that he had control over Ziwei segmentum and the original realm, he felt the pressure acutely. It was not enough for him to be a mere upper Renhuang. He needed a stronger realm of cultivation. Day by day, Futian had been receiving the inheritance of the guqin, and countless memories appeared in his mind. After a long while, the divine light on the guqin gradually dimmed, and the strings stopped moving as the divine light went out. However, Futian didn't stop cultivating. He sat there quietly, and he continued to be surrounded by the light of the rhythm. He needed time to perceive and digest the rhythmic way passed on to him by Serene the Great. There were so many exquisite pieces of guqin music that he needed time to sort them out in his head. In the ground below, many looked up at Futian. Those who could cultivate in the Starry Sky Cultivation Court were close confidants, as well as allies. As they witnessed Futian inherit the power from Serene the Great, they couldn't help but wonder what lied ahead for this young man. The sword goddess of Divine Palace of Fluttering Snow raised her head to look at Futian. "Ningyuan, I am afraid things will not be quiet for long." Previously, at the Donghua banquet, they knew very well how Ningyuan, the domain chief of the domain chief's manor, had treated Futian. Ninghua hunted Futian relentlessly and almost succeeded in killing him. Today, the power that was within Futian's control was far above that of the Donghua domain chief's manor. If Futian wanted to settle these old scores, he could do so now by heading over to Donghua domain in the Divine Prefecture. However, that was the domain chief's manor under the rule of the great emperor. Presumably, Futian had some concerns as well, so he wouldn't act rashly. However, with his talent and potential, he may very well stand at the top in the future. As long as nothing happened to him, this debt would be settled sooner rather than later. At that time, the domain chief's manor in the Donghua domain would be greatly endangered. As the current situation stood, Ninghua, known as the #1 genius of Donghua domain, was hard-pressed to contend with Futian. Aside from all the things that had happened in the past, it should not be too difficult for Futian to kill Ninghua. There were too many means and power under Futian's control, and Ninghua had none of these. In the Starry Sky world, everyone was quietly cultivating, perceiving the power of the imperial star. Many had made progress. Especially cultivators compatible with the power of the imperial star made progress much faster than the others. Several months had passed, and Futian stopped cultivating and started walking downward. There were familiar faces all around him. Someone walked towards Futian. Lord Luo was heard asking Futian, "How was it?" Serene the Great was the first man of music in the ancient era. The rhythm technique he cultivated is far too sophisticated for me to fully control and absorb for the time being. These past few months have been far from adequate. I am afraid that I will need to cultivate and comprehend frequently in the future, said Futian. When he heard those words, Lord Luo knew that Futian had completely inherited the musical inheritance of Serene the Great. How much help would Futian receive from this first man in music from ancient times? No one from the same generation as Futian could compare with him just on the way of rhythm alone. Fongai and Blind Tai came over as well. Although they were from Four Corner Village, they had regarded themselves as members of the Heavenly Mandate Academy after choosing to follow Futian. Since Futian was the center, whether it was the village or Heavenly Mandate Academy, or even Ziwei Imperial Palace, they would be part of Futian's power in the future. They knew this very well. "How is it outside?" asked Futian. "Not so quiet," Fongai replied. "Since the dragon turtle dragged you to the Ziwei segmentum, the news had shaken the original realm, and many cultivators from those top principalities wanted to visit you again. However, because you were not here, they were turned away. But judging from their intentions, it looks like they want to get close to you." At the moment, Futian was the most prestigious figure in the original realm. He had unlimited potential. Naturally, there would be forces from Divine Prefecture who wanted to befriend him. Everyone could see that Futian was definitely regarded as one of the most enchanting genius existences in the Divine Prefecture and maybe even the entire world. His growth was akin to the journey of those other major figures. If the Divine Prefecture is not aligned to deal with the Dark World, what good does it do to befriend me? Futian responded. Unless, of course, they could unite all the principalities and launch a war against the Dark World. Well, forget about this for now. There is something else. As soon as the dragon turtle incident happened, more cultivators came from the Divine Prefecture, the Dark World, and the empty Divine Realm. Those top figures never left either. They began to search for the ancient relics in the boundless void of the original realm, as if wanting to re-excavate the mysteries of the original realm. Fongai continued, and this time, it is said that several principalities have already rediscovered the relics of ancient times. As if it has been destined that as the entire original realm is changing, ancient ruins are also reappearing one after the another. Futian's expression grew somber. Would more relics appear? And it seemed that there was more than just the one. The original realm was the interface that formed after the collapse of the heavenly path. It seemed reasonable for ancient relics to emerge. Ziwei the Great and Serene the Great had all appeared in the original realm. The change of heaven and earth originated in the original realm. It seems that this prophecy is not false after all, Lord Luo murmured. Futian's eye drifted toward Lord Luo, and he asked, "Where did that prophecy come from?" "I don't know." Lord Luo shook his head. But now, cultivators in the Divine Prefecture and other worlds have all heard such prophesy, or else the top cultivators from other major worlds would not have descended in the land of the original realm. Chapter 2308 Intensified Changes. Before Futian returned from the Divine Prefecture, the original realm had been changing as cultivators from all over the world began to descend. Now, because there were imperial-level relics that surfaced successively in the original realm, top figures had begun to actively search for them in the original realm. The 3,000 realms of the Great Path of the original realm were now under Futian's control. What happened at the Infernal Divine Clan in the Dark World had shocked the cultivators from all sides. Now, no principalities dared to wreak havoc lightly in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. Therefore, they could only circulate in other places in the void outside the world of 3,000 realms of the Great Path. And now, many more relics had emerged one after the other. Were they being excavated? Futian couldn't help but feel emotional. What kind of a world was it like before the collapse of the heavenly path? That era was known as the Age of the Gods, and presumably, It was much easier to cultivate then than it was today. Even powerful characters were far from what could be compared to today. However, a catastrophe caused the heavenly path to collapse and the gods to perish. Before the original realm, there was the world of the heavenly path. The existence of so many relics was reasonable, but it was not easy to fully excavate all of them. Even in the long history, many secrets had yet to be unearthed. "Let's go back to the academy," Futian said. Although he had not yet fully understood all the inheritance of Serene the Great, it was already imprinted in his mind. He thought of continuing to cultivate in the starry sky world and improve himself. Even cultivating for a period of time would help him elevate his realm and enter the 8th realm. But the current changes that occurred within the original realm were something he wanted to witness. The so-called change in heavenly path originated in the original realm. In which direction would the original realm change? Several people who were around nodded. There were indeed some differences in the original realm of today. Futian was now the leader of the local forces in the original realm, and he should really go back and look things over. Furthermore, those willing to cultivate with Futian hoped to witness a legend in the making. The change of heaven and earth originated in the original realm. For Futian, he would be the king of the original realm. So would he be the main player behind this prophecy? Naturally, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy had such expectations, and Futian himself had already revealed this kind of talent. Futian walked down with many cultivators in tow. Futian's every move now inevitably affected many people, and many top-level cultivators were moving along with him. The most obvious ones among them were Old Ma and Blind Tai. These two top cultivators from Four Corner Village followed Futian wherever he went, always guarding his side. Even the top figures from the Heavenly Mandate Academy were hard-pressed to be as devoted as these two. Perhaps it was because the two wanted to repay Futian, Old Ma for Little Ling, and as for Blind Tai, Futian had bestowed him with an even greater favor. After he stepped onto the peak of Runhuang and exacted his revenge, Blind Tai had pledged himself completely to Futian. As for those companions with weaker cultivation, such as Gu Donglu, Wuchen, and the others, Futian did not want them to move around so freely, instead having them stay in the starry sky world and retreat to concentrate on cultivation and improve their realms. After all, everyone fighting in the original realm now were giant-level figures. The least of them were cultivators at the peak of Upper Renhuang. Cultivators of any lower realms were not qualified to participate. The Heavenly Mandate Academy. Futian and the others descended as they made their way back to the academy. A scan of his divine consciousness through the academy revealed that everyone in the academy was focusing on cultivating. Futian smiled. Currently, the Heavenly Mandate Academy was the absolute core of the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, and it is premier holy land, with a completely new look. The cultivators who came to the academy worked extremely hard, looking forward to the day they could enter the starry sky world to cultivate. Futian's figure flashed and arrived at a place. Brother-in-law, Huan Yinyu called out with a smile. Lord Taixian was by her side. "You are bothering Lord Taixian again?" Futian looked at Yinyu and smiled. "Not at all. I am keeping Grandpa Xian company," Huan Yinyu said with a smile. "That's right. Yinyu often chats with me, so I won't be bored," Lord Taixian replied, smiling, as he peered at Futian. "So were you able to control the inheritance power of Serene the Great?" Serene the Great had much wonderful divine music to pass down, and it will take time to master them all. Futian continued, "I heard that some changes took place in the original realm, so I came back to the academy. Is Lord Taixian aware of what is going on outside?" "I know some of them." Lord Taixian nodded. "It is said that several major forces have discovered the relics in the boundless space. Some relics were hidden between cracks in the space and have now been excavated. Some places, even ancient continents, have been discovered. Many forces from the outside world have shifted their attentions from the 3,000 realms of the Great Path to the endless world of the Void, looking for other discoveries. There have been many cultivators who came here to search before. Why did this happen all of a sudden?" Futian asked, a little puzzled, as he was truly stumped. "That is so." Lord Taixian nodded in agreement. At this moment, someone else arrived, and it was Emperor Nan. He said, "It may have something to do with the changes in heaven and earth. I don't know why, but some changes are taking place in the original realm. Those changes had already begun before your return to the original realm. Before, when the dragon turtle carried Shanine the Great, nothing of this sort had happened. But they appeared all of a sudden without warning. It was as if it was destined." "What force is leading this kind of change?" Futian asked. He really didn't understand. The original realm was the world of the heavenly path once, the old world. After its collapse, everything turned to dust. Back then, the only place discovered was the 3,000 realms of the Great Path as a place of cultivation. So where were the relics that now reappeared in the void? Where were they hiding before? They hadn't been unearthed for many years. But why did they suddenly reappear now? Emperor Nan looked deep in thought. It was as if he was considering something. But still, he shook his head and said, "I don't know." What he suspected seemed a little far-fetched and without basis. If that were the case, what was the reason? He couldn't understand this himself, and there was no way to affirm his suspicions, so he didn't say anything to Futian. In that case, the changes in the original realm may continue to intensify in the future? Futian queried. Emperor Nan nodded. If this continues to evolve, the changes in the original realm may indeed continue to increase in intensity. Futian frowned when he heard what Emperor Nan said. He seemed a little worried. The original realm has now attracted top figures from all parts of the world. If this change continues, I am afraid that the original realm will become a super battlefield, as it was in ancient times, and the cultivators from all worlds will compete in the original realm. I don't know what will happen then, Futian said in a low voice. Emperor Nan nodded in agreement. Chapter 2309. Above Expectations. Futian and the others did not leave immediately after they returned to the academy. Although it was rumored that many relics appeared in the original realm, Futian knew he couldn't take them all. Now the changes in the entire original realm intensified, with more and more relics surfacing. If he were to grab everything out there, it would almost certainly cause public outrage and create enemies out of the whole world. Take the current situation, for instance. He had the inheritance from several great emperors, thus becoming the focus of many powerful cultivators. If it weren't for the teacher who stood behind him, these top forces would have already attacked him in the Heavenly Mandate Academy. They wouldn't be waiting so docilely in the starry sky world for him to cultivate in peace. One principality wouldn't be capable of dealing with him, but what if they combine their forces? If they couldn't go to the starry sky world to challenge him, it certainly wouldn't be a problem for them to challenge Heavenly Mandate Academy. Futian knew very well that he had to give up some of the opportunities to other principalities in a situation like this instead of swallowing them all. However, Futian had also dispatched cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy to go out and assess the current state of affairs in the outside world. Even if they were not planning to take action now, they must monitor the current movement of the original realm. Now that he had complete control over the 9 supreme regions, he also had eyes and ears in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, so he had an idea of everything that was happening. However, to know the occurrences in the 3,000 realms of the Great Path and beyond, messengers had to be sent out. At present, all that was known had been spread far and wide. Perhaps some had discovered the relics while they were exploring, but they did not make it public. After all, no one wanted to attract even more rivals to this competition. Futian's circumstances were, in fact, a microcosm of all the forces in the entire original realm. All the forces had begun to mobilize, as the entire original realm was developing in this unknown direction. At this time, somewhere inside the original realm, suddenly heaven and earth underwent a terrible and violent change. This space began to collapse as a terrible dark vortex manifested. Later, a bright and brilliant divine light shot out from it as a group of people appeared with the divine light and stepped out of the vortex. The temperament of this group of people was extraordinary, and one single glance revealed that all of them were unusual, to say the least. They surveyed their surroundings, and their leader was heard marveling, "The original realm. This must be the world before the collapse of the heavenly path." An old man next to him nodded. It has long been rumored that the original realm was a land of ruins. Those at the bottom continued to cultivate here, but they never expected that there would still be changes in the original realm. Do you know why? The leader continued to ask. The cultivators next to them looked thoughtful, but then shook their heads. Perhaps someone thought that the world has been quiet for too long, the man said with a smile. But then his smile gradually receded as his inscrutable eyes stared into the distance. He expanded his divine consciousness to perceive the way between heaven and earth. He was heard murmuring, "Far too weak. If it weren't for the great changes in the original realm, he probably would never set foot in this land." As the man took a step forward, the others followed one after the other. A terrible aura permeated the space between heaven and earth, and there were traces of invisible divine light surrounding the area where they were, so they appeared as if they were some deities. At the same time, in other parts of the original realm, similar scenes played out asynchronously. Just as Futian and the others discussed at the Heavenly Mandate Academy, more and more powerful cultivators made their way into this world. Many of them were peak powers that had previously dismissed the original realm as inconsequential. Still, the changes in the original realm continued. Somewhere in the original realm, many cultivators stood in the void. Their eyes looked up and forward, and somewhere further up in the vast nothingness, the entire space in the void was tossing and roaring. The space began to crack, and from those terrible fissures, massive structures gradually emerged and became visible in front of them. An ancient aura hit them in the face, like ancient mountain ranges from yore. There was an atmosphere of decay that harbored within, as well as a heavy sensation of death. Furthermore, there was a faint breath that quickened everyone's heartbeat. It was as if this aura would not dissipate for years to come. At the same time, in another area of the original realm, a similar scene played out. The space of the void was torn apart, opened by some top cultivator with swordsmanship. It felt like the crack in this space was like a prison, and all the ancient relics were confined within. When this prison was broken open, the relics were released. Slowly, buildings re-emerged in the world. These buildings were full of ancient aura, but also accompanied by a sense of death. As these fissures widened, these newly released relics were becoming more and more terrifying. It turned out to be a boundless and gigantic city. What they had seen seemed to be just the tip of the iceberg. However, this city embodied an ambience of dilapidation, with broken walls and remnants of beams everywhere. It was as if it had experienced some catastrophe in a bygone era. It was extremely fortunate that some of these relics had been preserved and that they had not vanished in the destruction once upon a time. The top figure who cleft open the space in the void waited quietly beside him, watching a majestic and massive city gradually reveal itself. The entire original realm was constantly changing. The prophecy regarding the changes between heaven and earth originating in the original realm began to spread. By now, they were known to just about everyone. People started to believe in the prophecy. All the changes in the original realm made those powerful major forces tremble. Even the cultivators from the 3,000 realms of the Great Path had heard of this prophecy, and their hearts were greatly disturbed. No one knew what the original realm would look like in the future. In the cottage inside the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Futian was cultivating here when a group of men arrived. They were cultivators such as Old Ma, Emperor Nan, Xiao Dingtian, and the clan lord of the Dou tribe. All of them came from the outside. "What has happened to stir all the elders thus?" asked Futian, as he detected the solemn expressions on the faces of several Topernhuang. "The changes that have taken place in the original realm now far exceed our expectations, and there are more and more ancient relics appearing in various places," Emperor Nan said to Futian. Futian's eyes sharpened when he heard this. If Emperor Nan said so, the changes in the outside world must have been drastic enough to cause Emperor Nan's concern. In addition, the cultivators from the outside world have arrived. As far as Divine Prefecture is concerned, it is said that Ancient God Clan has arrived, Emperor Nan continued. Futian's eye focused a bit more as he whispered, "The Ancient God Clan?" "Yes, the Ancient God Clan. The Ancient God Clan that has lived on for countless centuries produced deities and still holds the heirs of the remains of the gods, who are qualified to be called the Ancient God Clan. They are the true power that stands at the peak. Even the Imperial Palace has to pay them proper respect," said Emperor Nan. Futian, in turn, was quite uneasy when he heard what Emperor Nen had to say. It seemed that this time, all parts of the world had been disrupted. When Futian was at the Heavenly Mandate Academy, some top forces from Divine Prefecture had come to visit him. However, as he was in no mood to socialize, he gave Old Ma the task to receive them in his stead. The truth was Futian needn't care much about these visitors anymore, especially those common forces at the top. With the power that was currently in the hands of the Academy, coupled with his own status today, even peak Renhuangs with perfect great paths did not have much to brag about in front of him. However, at this time, Futian personally received a group of visitors who were old acquaintances. More than 20 years ago, these cultivators from Song Imperial City of Divine Prefecture had sought out Futian. At the time, they wanted to take over the Heavenly Mandate Academy and force Futian to cooperate with them, thus making Heavenly Mandate Academy a representative branch of Song Imperial City in the original realm. However, their overture was rebuffed by Futian. And now, Futian's status was no longer that of 20 years ago, and the Heavenly Mandate Academy was no longer like it had been. The cultivators from Song Imperial City came with sincerity to form an alliance, without any ambitions as they had in the past. The Futian of today was someone that all the cultivators from Divine Prefecture desired to befriend. At the same time, in some other location, a group of cultivators materialized in the void. This group of people had astonishing aura, and were all dressed in black, looking serious and solemn. The man leading the group did not appear to be his senior. He looked like he was only 30 years or so, but his actual age in cultivation was something else entirely. There was a sense of dominance in those dark eyes of his, which emitted a strong sense of coercion. The aura of all the cultivators around him was incredibly frightening, as every one of them was a top-notch character. No matter which world, few major forces could come up with such an astounding display of power. Now that great changes are taking place in the original realm, rumor has it that there are many ancient relics in the void world outside the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. I wonder what will we encounter? A cultivator in all black asked. His voice was low and reverent. After so many years, I didn't expect that the original realm would change so drastically. The changes of heaven and earth arise in the original realm. I would like to know just how the original realm will dominate these changes of heaven and earth. Someone else spoke up as they looked at the young man in the lead. But the young man looked down to glance at the boundless void below and said, "Let's go to the Heavenly Mandate Realm first." The Heaven Mandate Realm? The cultivators behind him looked puzzled, but the young man nodded and continued, "The Heaven Mandate Realm, the Heavenly Mandate Academy, to see someone." Many around him didn't understand his intentions. Only a very special few knew the reason behind the youth's intention to go to the Heavenly Mandate Academy to meet this special someone. This was a top secret, and few were privy to this information. Mei Ting, where is he? Someone asked, referring to the Devil General from the Devil World. Mei Ting, he should be in the Heavenly Mandate Realm, the young man replied. Let's go. When he finished speaking, his figure floated forward, turning into a black light that moved at an incredible speed. The rest of the cultivators caught up with him, following along. In the Heavenly Mandate Realm, Mei Ting did not fight and search for these ancient relics. He was still drinking within the bounds of the Heavenly Mandate City, much like a hopeless drunkard. However, only he himself knew that although the wine was good, he didn't really drink it for the taste. He was staying in the Heavenly Mandate City for himself. He wanted to know certain things, which he still had no clue about. Perhaps time would give him the answer he sought. Suddenly, Mei Ting peered into the sky above, and his face revealed some surprise, and his eyes betrayed his emotions. He saw a group of men clad in black descended from the firmament, coming directly toward him as they landed above the tavern. The tavern seemed to feel that coercion. Everyone inside fell into dead silence. Mei Ting's gaze was directed at the young man and the cultivators who surrounded him. He said, "You have arrived as well." The changes in the original realm had even attracted people from the Devil World. Mei Ting, you are having a good time, a demonic cultivator commented. These cultivators were from the Devil World, and like Mei Ting, they were from the Devil Imperial Palace. All of them were supreme cultivators in the Devil World. "Are you here for the relics of the original realm?" asked Mei Ting. Everyone nodded. The young demonic cultivator in the lead took a meaningful look at Mei Ting, then turned his gaze to the far distance where a majestic and imposing structure stood. That must be the Heavenly Mandate Academy, right? The young man asked. Mei Ting looked at him, then in the direction of Heavenly Mandate Academy. He knew what the other was thinking. He responded, "It is indeed." "Indeed. Mr. Mei is in the mood." The young man smiled and said, "Cultivators from all sides are busy looking for relics, but you, sir, are here drinking and enjoying the view of the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Can you enlighten us as to your fascination with this place?" "No fascination to speak of. I'm just bored," Mei Ting replied casually. This young man was rather special. He held superior status in the Devil world as one of Devil Emperor's direct disciples. However, as one of the Devil generals himself, Mei Ting's status was not any lesser than the young man's, so he didn't bother affording the other with particular courtesy. Furthermore, the cultivators from the Devil world were somewhat different. The rule where the weak were preyed upon by the strong was more pronounced in their world. There were not many politics involved. Only strength was the true metric for everything. As long as one was strong enough, one need not worry about offending anyone else. In the Devil world, conflicts and frictions between cultivators who cultivated together in the Devil Imperial Palace were commonplace. Bored. The young demonic cultivator smiled and continued, "Perhaps it is because Mr. Mei is more interested in that academy. I have heard some things in the Devil world. Now that I am here in the original realm, I plan to visit their young king." When he finished speaking, he levitated into the air and headed towards the Heavenly Mandate Academy. All the cultivators from the Devil world followed his lead. Mei Ting didn't try to stop them when he saw this, but allowed the others to do as they pleased. He wasn't too worried about anything, as he knew the true strength that Heavenly Mandate Academy held currently. In truth, he was rather expectant of any potential conflicts. It would make things that much more interesting. Picking up the wine cup, Mei Ting drained another cup of wine, but his eyes were still focused on what was ahead. The real reason for that young man to come here to meet him was not Futian, the young king of the original realm, as he called him. He thought that it must be because of Yushang. In the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Futian was receiving the cultivators from Song Imperial City. At this time, they seemed to have perceived something as they raised their heads, looking towards the void. They saw that many top figures in the academy had risen into the sky, a grave expression on their faces. They were focusing on a group of cultivators in black that appeared above the firmament. They had sensed traces of oppression, indicating that these visitors were uncommonly powerful. The cultivators from Song Imperial City were equally alarmed when they saw this group of people. The old man who was in the lead was a little surprised. The cultivators from the Devil world had also arrived, and they had come to the Heavenly Mandate Academy first. Futian directed his attention there, and saw the young man who was in the lead. The two locked eyes, and Futian felt a sense of hostility from the other. He was a little curious. Who was this person? Chapter 23:11. Disciple of the Devil Emperor. Futian sensed the demonic might that circled this group of people. From it, he roughly guessed where this group had come from. Although Futian did not know the identity of the young demonic cultivator before him, there was no doubt that his group was from the Devil world. Otherwise, the entire group would not have such an intense demonic aura. The cultivators of the Song Imperial City glanced at Futian. They recalled that Mei Ting had also previously come to the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Why had the Devil world cultivators not searched for the relic, but instead came here to find Futian? From the expression in the leading youth's eyes, they were clearly here for him. Could it be that there was some hidden secret behind this? The youth walked down towards Futian. Blind Tai, Old Ma, and the others came forward to block him off, but Futian waved his hand slightly. Blind Tai and the others stepped down and did not block the youth from the Devil world, allowing him to descend and land not far from Futian. The demonic youth said, "College Chief of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, Palace Lord of Ziwei Imperial Palace, the current ruler of the original realm, the top monstrous figure in the original realm who obtained the sacred remains of Shunjia the Great Emperor and the teachings of Great Emperor Ziwei and Shenin the Great, Futian." He seemed to know Futian quite well. The youth from the Devil world already knew all the things that Futian had been through. Futian looked at the other party. The cultivators from the devil world who had appeared in the original realm before this mainly consisted of Mei Ting. Futian also had some interactions with him. However, that was mainly due to Yusheng. Futian never imagined that there were others in the devil world who paid so much attention to him. It seemed that Yusheng's status in the devil world was extraordinary. Otherwise, this youth would not pay so much attention to Futian's existence. After all, from the looks of this lineup, the youth from the devil world in front of him should be an extraordinary figure in the devil world. "Who are you, sir?" asked Futian. "I am Xiaomu from the devil world," replied the youth. Futian might not be aware of the significance of that name, but in the devil world, this name was already renowned far and wide. He was one of the direct disciples of the devil emperor. He had powerful cultivation and extraordinary status. A direct disciple of the devil emperor might inherit the title themselves one day. Whoever was the strongest would have the highest possibility of inheriting it. Xiaomu, Futian mumbled to himself. He did not know much about the devil world, so he naturally had not heard of his name. However, from the lineup before him, Futian had his suspicions. He said, "Are you a cultivator from Devil Imperial Palace?" "I am a disciple of the devil emperor," Xiaomu replied. The expression of the surrounding cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy immediately turned serious. Compared to the monstrous figures from the divine prefecture who came before, the identity of this youth before them was even more spectacular. Who would dare to offend a disciple of the devil emperor so curtly? Even though Futian had the backing of Master from Four Corner Village, with the other party's status, it was worthless in their eyes. Why had such a figure come here? Futian nodded his head slightly. He had a rough guess as to why Xiaomu had come. Now, Futian was somewhat curious. What was his godfather's status in the devil world? What about Yusheng's status? Now, he was certain that his godfather was a cultivator from the devil world. However, Futian did not know why his godfather had taken care of Yusheng and him. What secrets were involved in this? What happened 300 years ago? Futian believed that it would not be long before he would stumble upon the truth. After all, he could now come in contact with figures at the very top. Even a direct disciple of the devil emperor had come looking for him. When Futian reached the peak of the Renhuang Plain, he would probably have the opportunity to meet the figures at the very top. "What business do you have with the Heavenly Mandate Academy?" Futian asked as he looked up at Xiaomu. His voice was very calm. Xiaomu gave Futian a somewhat strange look. He seemed to look highly upon Futian, as expected of the current top monstrous figure of the original realm. Even after hearing who Xiaomu was, he had actually remained unshaken and was still calm. The white-haired youth before him was an extremely proud figure. "I merely came to see what sort of person the young ruler of the original realm is like," said Xiaomu. As he said this, his jet-black eyes became intense. They were a pair of demonic eyes. He looked towards Futian as demonic might circled around his own figure. A powerful demonic aura flowed frenziedly and began to spread out around him. There was one part that Xiaomu had not said out loud. He wanted to see what sort of person that fellow's best friend was like and where level his cultivation and abilities were. Futian looked at the other party's eyes. The pair of deep, demonic eyes was terrifying. They bore endless, overbearing pressure. A vast pressure pressed down on Futian's will. He was put into a hallucination. The person before him was no longer an approachable youth, but instead a demon. It stood there towering above all things, gazing down on all existence. The demon faced Futian, and its overbearing pressure pressed down on him. The demonic might could crush a person's will. Divine light similarly shot out from Futian's eyes. It was dazzling. Even amidst the hallucination, Futian stood on his spot quietly. The divine light flowed around him. His white hair and white robe accentuated his unparalleled temperament. It was as though he was a deity. Even when faced with the pressure from a demon, he remained unperturbed, and his facial expression was calm. The overbearing demonic might did not have any effect on him. Futian had experienced many things to reach his current plane of cultivation. He had faced the might of the will of the great emperors many times. He couldn't be crushed by Xiaomu's will. Even though Xiaomu's will was domineering, it alone was not enough to cause Futian's will to be shaken. The surrounding cultivators all stood silently as they watched the two figures facing each other head-on. One had black hair and was garbed in a black robe, while the other had white hair and was garbed in a white robe. Both of them were equally outstanding. Their robes fluttered in the wind. They seemed to be looking at each other casually. However, a powerful gale was forming around them and stirring up debris. Their gazes alone contained such astonishing might. Even the top cultivators could faintly sense a pressure acting on them. They unleashed their auras of the great path to block the gale from spreading outwards. Otherwise, the Heavenly Mandate Academy would most likely be ruined by this raging gale. In the distance, Mei Ting glanced in their direction. As he had speculated, Xiaomu was here to check Yi Futian out. Xiaomu was most likely curious about Yi Futian's ability. Xiaomu was naturally doing this because of Yusheng. Rumble. Suddenly, a stronger gale swept out. The demonic might churned and roared. An extremely overbearing aura gushed towards Yi Futian. At the same time, the divine light on Yi Futian's body grew brighter. Intense rumbling could be heard coming from his body of the great path. The gale became more and more violent and enveloped both of them in it. One by one, the top figures in the Heavenly Mandate Academy unleashed their auras. They shielded the entire Heavenly Mandate Academy in a light shroud. The next moment, Xiaomu and Yi Futian shot up into the sky. Their speed was frightening. They were akin to two beams of light that shot up into the heavens. They were high above in the sky in an instant. Their raging auras of the great path exploded, expanding towards the Heavenly Mandate City. Chapter 23:12, Demonic Form and Divine Body. Xiaomu was an 8th-tier Renhuang and a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Yi Futian was a 7th-tier Renhuang. He controlled the sacred remains of Shunjia, the Great Emperor. He was also the inheritor of the teachings of Great Emperor Zuwei and Shenin the Great. One was a top-level monstrous figure of the Devil World who was approaching the pinnacle. Another was the top monstrous figure of the original realm and the most prominent figure in the realm at the moment. The two of them suddenly confronted each other, standing across each other in the sky. Prior to this, there had been no premonition of a fight. With just an exchange of glances, they seemed to understand the other party's intention. Be it Xiaomu or the current Yi Futian, both of them had terrifying cultivation. The auras that the two of them released kept expanding, enveloping the vast space. All around the Heavenly Mandate City, countless people looked up into the sky. Their hearts were trembling intensely. Someone had actually come to challenge Yi Futian? For the people of the Heavenly Mandate realm, Yi Futian was already a legendary figure. He was the object of the faith of countless people, especially the cultivators from the younger generation. They worshipped him like a deity, and he was the goal that countless people pursued. He had pulled off too many miracles. The black-robed demonic cultivator was also extremely frightening. Who was he to dare challenge the current Yi Futian? I cultivated in the Devil World for more than 80 years. I joined Devil Imperial Palace when I was 30 and was later accepted by the Devil Emperor as a direct disciple. Now, I am an 8th-tier demonic emperor. In terms of cultivation plane, I hold a slight advantage over you. I will hold back a little, Xiaomu said as he looked at the figure standing across from him. His voice was overbearing and imposing. It contained an intense self-confidence. He claimed that he would hold back a little in his fight against Yi Futian and that he did not want to hold an advantage in terms of cultivation. Yi Futian's white robe danced in the sky. His expression was still calm. He looked at the other party and said, "There is no need to do so. I have cultivated for almost the same amount of time as you. Although my cultivation is at the 7th-tier Renhuang plane, I have yet to encounter an equal match at the same tier. So, you don't have to hold back." Even when faced with a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor who was at a higher level than him, Yi Futian was still confident that he could put up a good fight against the other party. His confidence stirred up the emotions of countless cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate City. The demonic cultivator was actually a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor from the Devil World. Existences at his level were all cultivators who stood at the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Even so, Yi Futian, who had a lower plane of cultivation, was still confident that he could put up a fight against Xiaomu. Perhaps Xiaomu would be the strongest opponent that Yi Futian had faced so far. Mei Ting, who was drinking wine in a tavern in the distance, looked in their direction too. He was also very interested in the battle. Yi Futian was a legendary figure that Yu Sheng willingly followed. Mei Ting wanted to see for himself how strong Yi Futian currently was. Xiaomu would most likely be a huge challenge for Yi Futian. As one of the 8 great devil generals in the devil world, Mei Ting was well aware of the ability of the direct disciples of the Devil Emperor. Those monstrous figures in the outer realms could not hold a candle to them. Being a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor meant that Xiaomu received personal instruction from the Devil Emperor. Xiaomu's demonic art was taught by the Devil Emperor. The top figures from the Heavenly Mandate Academy had serious expressions too. They also realized how powerful Yi Futian's opponent was. Xiaomu was someone extraordinary, even for them. It was rare for them to encounter a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. The status of Xiaomu was similar to that of Spear Emperor Du Yu, who came to the original realm more than 20 years ago with Princess Donghuang. Spear Emperor Du Yu was a direct disciple of Donghuang the Great. The Devil Emperor, who dwelled far in the devil world, was a mighty legendary figure. How strong would his disciple be? The auras emanating from Yi Futian and Xiaomu grew more and more frightening. The demonic might roared and churned. At the same time, intense rumbling of the great path could be heard from Yi Futian's body. His body turned into the way and became the divine body of the great path. It was domineering. In the previous battles, the Renhuangs at the same tier as Yi Futian could not withstand a blow from his flesh. One could imagine how menacing the divine body, which Yi Futian inherited from Shunjia, the great emperor, was. Seemingly sensing the terror of Yi Futian's flesh, Xiaomu's body was also metamorphosing. His demonic form was instantly covered with terrifying lightning. Black and purple divine lights gathered and merged with his body. One could sense the power of his flesh even better with their will. His flesh was fully charged with overbearing, destructive power. The gazes of the cultivators from the Song Imperial City narrowed when they saw this scene. The cultivators from the Divine Prefecture were rather unfamiliar with the Devil Emperor. However, those long-standing top forces from the Divine Prefecture heard rumors about the Devil Emperor before. An elder said, "Rumor has it that the Devil Emperor is a one-in-a-million genius in the devil world. He has created many demonic arts which are unprecedented and unsurpassable. He is a bona fide legend. The demonic arts which he created are all top demonic techniques in the world. They are the pinnacle of demonic techniques. Furthermore, it is said that the Devil Emperor suits his teaching in accordance with his students' aptitude. Based on the cultivation of each demonic cultivator, he teaches them different demonic arts so that the demonic arts are compatible with the learners." The elder looked at the sky and continued, "Rumor has it that all the disciples of the current Devil Emperor have inherited very formidable power. Since this Xiaomu is one of his direct disciples, he must have inherited some form of demonic art from the Devil Emperor. I'm curious to find out how strong he is." The facial expressions of many top figures from the Heavenly Mandate Academy turned solemn when they heard the elder's words. They were not sure how strong the Devil Emperor was. However, the Devil Emperor was the one who ended the chaos in the devil world. He was the legendary figure who united and ruled over the entire devil world. His name was on par with that of Donghuang the Great. He was one of the very few cultivators who stood at the peak. How strong would his direct disciple be? Even though they had lots of confidence in Yi Futian, they were still uncertain about whether or not he could surpass the difference between their planes and win the fight against this direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. The top figures would not have worried about Yi Futian if his opponent was not a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, but instead a direct disciple of any of the top forces from the Divine Prefecture. After all, the direct disciples of the top forces paled into insignificance compared with the direct disciples of the Devil Emperor. Xiaomu's gaze was locked on Yi Futian. Both of them could sense how powerful the flesh of their opponent was. One was a demonic form, while the other was a divine body surrounded by endless runes and divine light. "Let me experience how powerful the body of the great path inherited from Shunjia the great emperor is," Xiaomu said loudly. His voice was deep and resonant. It caused the space to shake. He took a step forward. He didn't unleash any demonic arts. Instead, he intended to clash into Yi Futian head-on with his flesh. His super-demonic form was also an inheritance from the Devil Emperor. He refined it with demonic lightning to create his own demonic form of the Great Path. He had successfully forged the super-destructive heavenly demon form. Each and every disciple of the Devil Emperor had to cultivate the super-demonic form. Then, they had to merge it with their own flesh to create their own demonic form. The demonic cultivators were very particular about the cultivation of their bodies. Without strong flesh, it was hard for them to unleash the might of the demonic arts. As a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, Xiao Mu had cultivated his body to its utmost limit. His body was domineering. When Xiao Mu stepped forward, the entire sky shook and thundered. The demonic might churned and exerted great pressure on everyone else. Yi Futian's flesh was almost invincible. Since he had forged the divine body, he had not met anyone who could battle him with their flesh alone. However, now that he was facing Xiao Mu, even he felt a sense of pressure. It made him recall the initial sensation when he first met Yusheng. Yusheng's body was very strong. Aside from his demonic art cultivation, it was also due to his innate abilities. Having cultivated in the devil world, Yusheng's body must have been trained to an even more terrifying level. Yi Futian wondered how Yusheng's cultivation was progressing now. However, Yi Futian was not worried about Yusheng's cultivation at all. That fellow would certainly not fall behind. His figure pounced forward, and he also stepped out. Both of them did not unleash law power attacks. Instead, they walked straight towards each other. Even so, before they even clashed, an extremely ferocious storm swept out. Intense rumbling of the great path filled the skies. The rumbling caused many cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy down below to have goosebumps as they watched the terrifying scene in the sky above. Was this the strength of the flesh that could be achieved by a cultivator? Even the giant-level figures were astonished. Renhuang Qian stood out to protect the Heavenly Mandate Academy, preventing it from being damaged by the shockwaves from the battle in the sky. In the sky above, demonic light and divine light swept out. The two of them walked straight towards each other. Then, both of them punched out towards their opponent at the same time. There was no fancy display of technique. Both of them unleashed terrifying attacks with just their bodies straight towards their opponent. Bang! The sky shook violently. An unparalleled storm swept out around them. With both of them at the center, a frightening cyclone was formed. Their figures were not sent flying. Both of them stood there, straight and tall. Yi Futian felt a menacing demonic light surge into his body. The demonic light contained unparalleled destructive power. It wanted to tear apart his flesh. However, the divine light of the great path circulated within him. His flesh was almost perfect and would not be destroyed so easily. Xiao Mu similarly felt a powerful shockwave surge up his arm and into his demonic form. However, his demonic form had also been honed and trained. In extraordinary locations in the devil world, it had undergone the baptism of countless strikes of demonic lightning. It was an immortal and indestructible body. Even ninth-tier Renhuangs would have a hard time trying to destroy him. Yet, Xiao Mu was surprised. Yi Futian, who was clashing with him, had not been knocked back. He was taking Xiao Mu head-on. It was clear that Yi Futian's body was indeed top-tier. To be able to encounter such an opponent, Xiao Mu was feeling somewhat excited. Menacing demonic light flowed, and absolute power gathered in his arm. Once again, he punched out. Faced with his overbearing attack, an ordinary 8th-tier demonic emperor would be annihilated with a mere punch. He would not need to attack twice. Chapter 23:13 Broadsword Will. The physical body constructed by Xiao Mu was the super-destructive heavenly demon form, with extreme destructive power. Not only was his body tempered to perfection, but once it collided with an opponent, it could tear and destroy the opponent apart immediately. When he was still cultivating in the devil world, there was once a very well-known demonic figure behaving with arrogance and insolence. However, with his physical body alone, Xiao Mu could smash the opponent's demonic form to pieces, killing him. With the terror brought on by his super-destructive heavenly demon form, Yi Futian's cultivation at 7th realm shouldn't be able to withstand even a single blow from him. However, the fact that Yi Futian's physical body was strong enough to compete with him excited Xiao Mu inexplicably. At this moment, with Xiao Mu in the middle, A series of black streamers of silent destruction fell down and surrounded him. They began to spread outward, turning the vast space into a domain of silent destruction as well. Every one of these black streams of light seemed to contain the ultimate aura of destruction. The booming roars from Futian's body had become more intense. It seemed that there were many characters of the Great Path floating around him, a faint aura of swordsmanship circulating inside his body. It was as if his body had turned into a body of the sword. Futian had cast his physical body with the way, and it was his chosen medium of cultivation. As far as collisions of physical bodies were concerned, he wasn't afraid of anyone, even those considered major figureheads. He didn't think that his physical body would be weaker than his opponent, even if this Xiaomu were personally taught by the Devil Emperor himself, who was also in possession of a body in the extreme with a higher realm. Still, he was not afraid of a physical confrontation. The two collided again. It was like an encounter between gods and demons. Above the firmament, two domineering bodies continued to collide, causing the sky to erupt with another violent howl. Even the space seemed to tremble. An extremely heavy sensation hung in the air. Streamers of pitch-black destructive light appeared upon Futian, rushing into his body. But there was also a destructive broadsword that invaded deep inside Xiaomu, intending on destroying his way. In the terrible trembling reverberation of the sounds, the expressions on their faces never changed. They appeared extremely calm, as if they were not affected at all, when in fact, such terrifying attacks would have already shattered anyone with lesser cultivation. Below, those cultivators from the Devil World shuddered inwardly. All of them were from the Imperial Palace of the Devil World, and all of them were extraordinary cultivators. Clearly, they had a better idea than anyone else regarding the true strength of Xiaomu's physical body. In their opinion, how could anyone from the land of the Divine Prefecture compete with the Devil Emperor's own direct disciple? However, Futian not only collided with him head-on, but also confronted him when he was one realm lower. Was this the power of the body inherited from that legendary Shunjia, the great emperor from the ancient days of yore? It seemed that in the land of Divine Prefecture, this once abandoned land in the original realm, a supremely enchanting genius had been born. This strength was no less than any top enchanting geniuses from the Imperial Palace. No wonder this man created so many legends in the original realm, someone whispered. So, did Xiaomu know that this man is extraordinary? Was that why he deliberately came to the Heavenly Mandate realm? To fight with him? Someone asked. Many of them did not know about the relationship between Futian and Yushang, which was only known to a few. Perhaps, after all, this man is the #1 enchanting genius in the original realm. He should be proud of himself, given that he's able to fight Xiaomu body to body, someone responded. But the outcome will remain the same. Someone looked up into the sky. This was not the ultimate state of Xiaomu's super-destructive, heavenly demonic form. Super-destructive heavenly demonic form was derived from the Devil Emperor's super-demonic form, so its power is shockingly terrifying. Even though his opponent had inherited the body-refining method from Shunjia, the Great Emperor, Xiaomu had inherited the body-refining demonic method of the Devil Emperor. Therefore, they were confident that the winner of this physical battle would be Xiaomu. The collision above the firmament became even more fierce. Again and again, the two met in the blasts, but not only did their momentum not weaken any, but it was getting more powerful than ever. The fierce roar of the great path in the firmament seemed to indicate it was on the verge of collapsing when these bodies would shatter the great path. In the battle, the demonic aura from Xiaomu intensified so that it was even more horrific. It was as if he was no longer a human, but instead was made of the flesh cast by the ultimate destructive thunder. As he lifted his hands, hundreds of thousands of black demonic currents flowing into every part of his body so that his every move contained frightening destructive power. Gradually, Xiaomu's physical body seemed to have undergone another transformation during the battle. It was now completely pitch black, turning into the ultimate demonic body. Bang! There was another violent collision. The two banged against each other again, and at the moment of collision, Futian felt an infinite destructive force rush into his body. Every part of his body was trembling, and he was knocked back. This was the first time the two had been separated by so much distance. Futian steadied himself and looked up at the other side. Xiaomu stood there like a giant demon god at this moment. His eyes were pitch black and fixed on him, full of boundless dominance. He addressed Futian directly. Not bad. I didn't expect to have to use my true strength against you. You deserve to be called the new king of the original realm. His voice was domineering and confident, even tinged with a certain disdain. Divine light flowing around Futian as he looked at that demon body and said, "You are not too bad yourself. This will force me to be a bit more serious." Huh. Xiaomu frowned. What did Futian mean by force him to be a bit more serious? Did he mean that he didn't take it seriously before? His demonic eyes stared at Futian, and he saw the divine light flowing on Futian's body as an even more brilliant light burst from him. Faintly, he seemed to be hearing the sounds of Buddha and the divine light of the sun and the moon flowing about. The light reflected on that body, and a pattern was formed. Xiaomu was somewhat alarmed. Before, was Futian being casual, not using his full strength? Boom, boom, boom. In this instant, Futian's body seemed to be howling fiercely like a terrifying behemoth, boundless divine splendor flowing about. His body moved forward and turned into a light, rushing straight towards Xiaomu. At this moment, Xiaomu's demonic eyes perceived Futian as a deity, full of incomparable brilliance. Xiaomu's eyes sharpened when he saw this before him. He looked extremely grave. He stepped forward, rocking the void as a massive demonic fist blasted forward, colliding with Futian's fist. The people below looked above the firmament, and the two of them seemed to have transformed into real gods and demons. The great path was shattered with one blow. Then, under the shocking gazes of the cultivators from the devil world, Xiaomu's body was knocked away, flying backward. A terrible aura of destruction appeared on that dark demonic body, and the two extreme powers of sun and shadow wreaked havoc in his body. Even as the ultimate demonic body, it was difficult to bear such polarized bodies. The demonic light flowed as Xiaomu ground to a stop, staring at Futian. He realized that he had, unexpectedly, lost to his opponent in the collision between physical bodies of the Great Path. The super-destructive heavenly demonic form was suppressed and repelled by the blow just now. In the exchange that truly mattered, he had lost. Steadying himself, demonic might roared from within Xiaomu. A terrible demonic domain appeared between heaven and earth, shrouding the boundless space. He stared at Futian and appeared to have lost the edge of that arrogance, but his spirit of confidence and dominance remained. Although he had heard of Futian's reputation and knew of his relationship with Yushang, he never thought he would lose. Of course, the failure resulted from that physical collision didn't indicate a final outcome. Although cultivators of the demonic way tempered their physical bodies, it was definitely not the only thing that made them powerful. On top of everything, he was a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Above the firmament, pitch-black light streamers of demonic way flowed about and turned into demonic blades. A field of demonic blade appeared between heaven and earth. Infinite, pitch-black demonic blades moved about in the void, covering its vast terrain. The broadsword will was filled with endlessly fierce destruction and murderous intent. A horrible cloud of catastrophe gathered as if the power of dark thunder was converging. Behind him, a massive and boundless demonic blade appeared, capable of cutting through a corner of the sky. Xiaomu stretched out his hand, and the heaven and the earth suddenly let out a savage roar. In the storm of destruction, a pitch-black demonic blade appeared in his hand. Xiaomu grabbed the demonic blade, and an unparalleled destructive force burst out from him. Just that broadsword will alone seemed to tear through the power of the Great Path. When Futian felt this power, his expression became grave. This broadsword will was indeed terrifying. Chapter 23:14. The Blade and the Rod. A strong broadsword will appeared in the entire field. Under this broadsword will, Futian felt that everything he saw in front of him was changing. It was as if this place was no longer as it was previously. Instead, it was now filled with terrifying demon gods. These demon gods were each holding a demonic blade, standing in different positions, covering this corner of the sky. Terrifying broadsword will tore through the space, aiming toward him as if to crush his will completely. Just this broadsword will alone was enough to shock everyone into silence, capable of knocking them down. Any Runhuang who was not firm enough would doubtlessly crumble under this broadsword will, unable to bear its intimidation. Xiaomu held the blade in both hands. At this moment, all the demon gods in the heavens seemed to be holding the demonic blade in their hands as well. A fierce storm of destruction swept across the space. Before the blade was discharged, Futian could sense the oppression of the broadsword while slashing down to suppress him, a pressure so heavy it was almost suffocating. It was simply astounding. Even when he was facing those at the peak of Renhuang in the ninth realm, Futian had never experienced such intense oppression. Of course, it may be that someone at this level hadn't really collided with him in the real sense of the word. But there was no doubt that Xiaomu's own combat power was spectacularly horrific. After all, he was the direct disciple taught by the Devil Emperor himself in Renhuang of the 8th realm. Once in the realm of Upper Renhuang, the gap in each step of the realm was significant, much like an insurmountable chasm. But Futian was now facing a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, who was an entire realm higher than him. The roar that erupted from Futian's body of the Great Path became more fervent and violent. The broadsword will descended on his body, but was unable to crush his will. There was a faint imperial divine glory shining upon him, so that he appeared even more impressive. He had inherited the power of several great emperors. Among them, Shenjia the Great Emperor and Ziwei the Great were both extraordinary great emperor cultivators. Shenjia the Great Emperor had dared to challenge the heavens, while Ziwei the Great commanded several great emperors under him. Having inherited the incomparable powers of these two, Futian had constructed an indestructible physical body and spiritual will. In short, he was not that easily shaken. Furthermore, as he felt that potent broadsword will, his body boomed, and an equally intimidating spirit manifested upon him as well. The starlight flowed upon his body, which seemed to transform into a starry sky world. At this moment, his physical body underwent another transformation. He became something like a divine body of the starry sky. Moreover, there was a terrifying howl of an ape that shook heaven and earth. Suddenly, strong coercion emerged as a massive war ape appeared behind Futian. Boom! The war ape trampled above everything, and suddenly, the sky roared. The vast space seemed to solidify. This war ape, like a battle beast from the starry sky, was the starry war ape. An unusual vision appeared in the world behind Futian. This sight before them made many cultivators tremble inside. What ability could cause such a vision to appear? Previously, they had not seen Futian using it. The cultivators from Four Corner Village squinted their eyes as their hearts quivered. They had not anticipated Futian to have cultivated this divine method to this degree. The Starry War Song, one of the 7 divine methods of Four Corner Village, could summon the Starry War Ape, whose presence was incredibly wild and menacing. Its attack power was unparalleled. This particular ability was controlled by Shi Kuei in Four Corner Village. At the same time, when Futian unlocked the mysteries of Four Corner Village, he had also cultivated various secret methods. This was something known by all the cultivators from the village. Now, it seemed that Futian was using another divine method from the Four Corner Village to fight against the disciple of the Devil Emperor. At this moment, Xiaomu raised the blade with both hands, and the demonic light circulated upon the demonic blade, forming a frightening sight. In this field, many illusions of the demon god seemed to raise their blades simultaneously, ready to strike. Even before the strike was unleashed, its power was already shocking. It was as if it could shatter this corner of the sky, and no one was capable of stopping it. Cultivators from the devil world below wore a solemn expression as their eyes fastened on Xiaomu, who was in the void. Even though Xiaomu's super-destructive heavenly demon form was physically defeated by Futian, now boosted by the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon, what kind of earth-shattering destructive power would be discharged by this combination? They were expectant as well. It seemed that Xiaomu had never treated an opponent so seriously. Futian had really angered Xiaomu, and that had pushed Xiaomu into his strongest state yet, gathering all his strength to battle with Futian. Xiaomu took a step forward, and a majestic and massive figure of the demon god appeared above the firmament. It stood there, containing the most supreme majestic spirit to crush down on this space. In this area, under the figure of that demon god, everything was null, and all beings were inconsequential. 9 slashes of the heavenly demon contained 9 styles of strike, and each strike morphed to increase in strength. When the 9 strikes were released, even the heavenly demon would be cut down, hence the name. Xiaomu's hand slammed down. Even with cultivation as great as his, he needed to exert an incredible amount of strength to unleash this sword strike, as if on the verge of exhausting all of his energy to release it. Just this first strike alone seemed to have hollowed out his strength and spiritual energy. But at the same time, only when he smashed down with the blade did the cultivators around them realize what was happening. A pitch-black fissure appeared between heaven and earth, and everything was split open and pulverized. At the same time, the illusions of the demon god and their surrounding also mimicked their movements and struck. In this area of the Great Path, a series of blasting light of the blades cut through the void, destroying everything in their path. Even those major figureheads felt their hearts tremble when this strike was unleashed. It was simply too powerful. Just the first strike contained such horrific prowess. This was the true blade technique. Compared with the demonic blade in front of them, it seemed that what they had known before to be blade techniques couldn't be considered technique at all. Terrifying rumbling sounds were heard, and the vision of the great path around Futian was becoming more radiant as a starry world surrounded by countless stars was formed. When the blade light came down, the starry war ape howled into the heavens, and those surrounding stars created an unparalleled defensive force, blocking the invading broadsword will and those countless sword shadows. At the same time, a rod appeared in Futian's hand, as if it had been transformed by the stars. It was heavy, full of boundless and overbearing energy. When the blade slashed toward him, the rod blasted forth. These two terrifying forces met and collided in midair. The destructive demonic blade slashed through the shadow of the rod that had shattered the space. The power that erupted from the contact began to tear through the surrounding space. The great path was shattered into pieces, and cracks appeared where the attacks had occurred. Xiaomu's combination was the super-destructive heavenly demon form aided by the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. However, Futian's divine body of the great path worked in sync with the starry war song from Four Corner Village and the power of the starry great path. The ultimate power exuded from this combination was unimaginably frightening. The storm of destruction still raged between the two. Xiaomu's eyes were pitch black and impenetrable. His arm retracted as the blade returned between his hands, raised high above. Dark divine light of thunder fell and circulated upon the blade. An even more powerful demonic light rushed into the sky, and Xiaomu unleashed the second strike without any hesitation. Each strike from the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon was stronger than the previous strike. Even Run Huang at the peak couldn't survive just a couple of these slashes. Chapter 23:15. The Air. Xiaomu unleashed the second strike, and it was like an angry roar from the demon god. The blade opened up the sky, carving out a series of horrific destructive fissures. Futian raised his head and saw a gigantic and boundless demonic blade slashing towards him, like a strike from the demon god himself. Boom! Surrounded by starlight, heaven and earth seemed to solidify. The starry power was everywhere, so the space felt tremendously heavy. The starry war ape roared madly as Futian picked up a long rod and smashed it down. This shocking blow wanted to shatter the sky but collided with the demonic blade that blasted at him instead. The collision resulted in an eruption of terrible divine light that was hard for anyone to behold. There was a loud rumbling noise, and the surrounding great path seemed to be exploding in a most horrific manner. Nonetheless, this strike had been blocked and could not obliterate Futian or get anywhere near him. This blow, at best, was barely adequate. It seemed that even the 9 slashes of heavenly demon couldn't crush Futian's attack, and these two had met their match in each other. The hearts of the cultivators below palpitated, especially those top figures from the devil world. Xiaomu unleashed the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon with all his might. Its power had already come close to threaten even peak-level Runhuang. However, the second strike of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon did not seem to pose a real threat to Yi Futian because it had been successfully blocked by him. The starry war ape, as well as the power of the stars, and his body in the Great Path, were all extremely awesome. Multiple powers now blended into one, perfectly erupting from the center that was Yi Futian. The power that erupted was no lesser than Xiao Mu's 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. It seemed that to defeat Yi Futian, the second strike from the 9 slashes was far from sufficient. The force of the second blow hadn't completely dissipated before Xiao Mu took another step forward. There were terrible fissures in the surrounding space as the great path seemed to be torn and destroyed. Another wave of broadsword will gathered once again, as if overlapping and reinforcing blade momentum from before. It was getting stronger. A terrifying coercion blasted down as the sky howled. The great path roared as those demon gods appeared, like some heavenly demons. Another strike appeared, blooming with a world-destroying demonic light, overlapping again with the blade momentum from before. They seemed to land on the same track and smash down in the same trajectory, but it was heavier, stronger, and more uncompromising. The third strike of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon was already the most exquisite of the first 3 strikes, and also the strongest. This offensive technique was a mass-slaughtering technique created by the Devil Emperor when he was besieged and suppressed by numerous demon emperors when he was unifying the Devil world. The 9 slashes of the heavenly demon had beheaded countless demon emperors, terrorized the Devil world until it was flattened by him. Before he proclaimed his reign, he had always been hailed as one of the terrifying existences in the history of the Devil world. He was the first enchanting genius since the collapse of the heavenly path, whose name was known throughout the past and the present. After his proclamation as the Emperor, many thought that the Devil Emperor was no lesser than the legendary Devil Emperors of ancient times. He wanted to become the first person in the history of the Devil world to unify the Devil world itself and unify the outside world. The blade technique created by the Devil Emperor was intimidating, to say the least. It was said that when the Devil Emperor deployed the 8th strike, it was almost near invincible, and no one could stop his blade. The staff technique converged again, blasting toward that 3rd strike. However, this time it was not as before, as the staff shadow was shattered. Even though it was able to block that scary strike, it's the first time Yi Futian's staff technique was suppressed. He was repelled back a few steps. It was not that his own strength was any lesser than that of Xiao Mu, but that the attacking technique he deployed was not on par with the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. After all, this was the ultimate slaughtering technique created by the Devil Emperor. The cultivators from the Devil world were a little relieved when they beheld this sight. Although Yi Futian was very powerful, the opponent he was facing was Xiao Mu. No matter how strong he was, how could he possibly compete with the Devil Emperor's direct disciple, especially when this disciple's realm was higher than his? Yi Futian's inheritance was, after all, from the great emperors of yore, and the Devil Emperor was a great emperor who existed in the world right now. However, if Yi Futian and Xiao Mu were in the same realm, Xiao Mu would probably lose this battle in the end. If he had to battle with such difficulties in a situation where his realm was higher, it only served to accentuate Yi Futian's natural talent and the strength of his combat effectiveness. As the first genius talent of the original realm, this young king of the original realm, indeed, did not disappoint. His prestige was not in name only. Otherwise, with so many top figures hanging around, how could he become the king of the original realm? Xiao Mu looked relieved when he saw that Yi Futian was repelled by the 3rd strike. His dark eyes glanced at Yi Futian. He thought that he had finally backed down. Yi Futian had shown signs of defeat with that 3rd strike, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to destroy Yi Futian, and this was just the 3rd strike. After the blade smashed down, its momentum did not disappear. On the contrary, it became stronger. There seemed to be a resonance in this area of heavenly demon. Those demon gods seemed to mimic the same actions as Xiao Mu, raising their blades. In the vast and boundless space, many demon gods raised their blades at the same time, and these forces resonated with one another. Before the blade was released, a terrible slaughtering and destructive power had already swept toward Yi Futian, with the potential to destroy everything. Yi Futian had retreated at the third strike, so the next two strikes should end the battle. Xiaomu thought the fourth strike was gathering momentum, and the storm was getting more terrifying, raging in this space. The storm was capable of slaughtering ordinary Runhuang as it contained incredible power of ruination. Yi Futian sensed this power, and there was a divine light flashing through his eyes, and it seemed to become heavier still. The roar in his body became more violent and fierce, however. Characters flew out as his body morphed with the way. It became something far more terrifying. At the same time, there was a divine light shining at his brow chakra, akin to imperial glory. He looked even more dazzling, like some heavenly deity. The stars in the sky centered around Yi Futian with just one thought, and the starry glory surrounded him. A phantom of Yi Futian seemed to appear on every star, and at the moment, Yi Futian seemed to be everywhere, becoming one with this starry sky. When the terrifying demonic blade came in for the kill, it collided with the starry field and was blocked by the light screen. It failed to come close to Yi Futian. With his body as the center, the stars had formed an absolute field of power, and this area of the Great Path was inching toward the other, on the prowl to invade. Yi Futian's body floated in the center of this starry world, surrounded by countless starry divine lights that showered upon him. The cultivators below watched Yi Futian, their hearts beating wildly. Whether it was cultivators from the Devil World or the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the hearts of those cultivators palpitated. The cultivators from Ziwei, especially, were more electrified now than ever. Yi Futian was like the true heir of Ziwei the Great. Chapter 23:16 Victory and Defeat. The changes to Yi Futian similarly caused the hearts of the cultivators of the Devil World to tremble. Before this, when they saw Yi Futian being pushed back, they had believed the battle to be over. However, it seemed that they were too optimistic. This battle was just beginning. Xiaomu grew stronger and stronger. Yi Futian also rose to the occasion. He kept unleashing new abilities. He had not been going all out at all since the start of the battle. This made the top figures of the Devil World feel somewhat surreal. A 7th-tier cultivator actually dared not go all out when facing an 8th-tier direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. How confident was Yi Futian in his own abilities? An instant change appeared in Xiaomu's demonic eyes. Yet, the more powerful Yi Futian grew, the more it seemed to stir up Xiaomu's fighting spirit. His battle spirit was ablaze right now. A storm swept out, and the silhouettes of the demons in the sky moved, resonating with him. Lifting the blade with both his hands, all the power of the Great Path in Xiaomu's body surged into the demonic blade. It caused demonic light from the blade to pierce the heavens. Terrifying clouds covered the skies. The scene before the crowd was astonishing. On the other side, with Yi Futian's figure as the center, divine starlight shone extremely brightly. His body radiated with imperial glory. Bathed in the divine light, Yi Futian was like a true god. Stars circled around him. His shadow was on each of the stars, as though he controlled all of them. Buzz. Xiaomu slashed down for the 4th time. With this slash, the various demons in the sky also slashed down with their demonic blades at the same time. Frightening cracks appeared in the sky, ripping apart all of existence. Against these demonic blades, no one could survive. Boom, boom, boom. The demonic blades met with resistance this time. They cleaved down on the stars that filled the sky. The stars that circled around Yi Futian's figure formed a light shroud of stars. The blade will of the demons were all blocked off by these stars. Only the domineering blade in the middle, which was the one of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon unleashed by Xiaomu, cleaved the light shroud apart. At the same time, it shattered a star before it. It was as though no defensive power could withstand this blade. However, the people down below could all sense that the might of this blade had already been weakened. It would most likely be difficult for Xiaomu to end Yi Futian with this slash. As expected, when the astonishing blade slashed down, countless runes appeared around Yi Futian's body and formed an absolute domain of stars. The blade will flashed, but it could not break through the defense of the stars. Cracks appeared on the stars. Then, the momentum of the blade was halted, and it could not advance any further. As the cultivators beneath the sky watched, endless blade will landed on the stars. It caused cracks to form on the stars. However, the stars were not shattered, and they had successfully blocked this ferocious attack. Was this the defensive technique passed down through the teachings of Great Emperor Ziwei? Many people down below thought. Great Emperor Ziwei was one of the most famous great emperor figures in the ancient era. He was a marvel of his time. How powerful was he? Rumor has it that Great Emperor Ziwei could control the various stars in the sky. He was the ruler of a segmentum. Such an extraordinary figure must have certainly cultivated powerful techniques. However, the various cultivators had never seen them before. They had only caught a glimpse of such techniques from observing Renhuang Qian during his battles. Now, Yi Futian seemed to be unleashing the power of the teachings he inherited from Great Emperor Ziwei. How powerful would this technique be? The defensive power of this technique was evident. The fourth blade was blocked. Xiaomu initially thought that the previous 2 slashes were enough to end the battle. Unfortunately, he was wrong. By now, he had exhausted much of his strength. Each and every slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon took a huge toll on the user. It was already awe-inspiring for Xiaomu to be able to unleash 4 slashes. Xiaomu slashed down for the 5th time. His 5th slash was even more powerful than the 4th. The momentum was even more astonishing. The 5th slash caused cracks to form on many stars around Yi Futian. The defensive light shroud before Yi Futian shattered into pieces after being cleaved into half. Although Yi Futian still managed to block this 5th slash, the stars were on the verge of crumbling. It was as though they would be destroyed at any second. Xiaomu didn't underestimate Yi Futian. From his perspective, if Yi Futian hadn't unleashed the power he inherited from Great Emperor Ziwei, the 5th slash would have certainly ended the battle. This 5th blade was absolutely domineering, yet it was still not enough to defeat Yi Futian. Right now, Xiaomu felt too exhausted to press on. He took a step forward. He was akin to a demon as his gaze locked on Yi Futian. Xiaomu proclaimed, "This next slash should end the battle." He couldn't afford to drag the battle any longer. It cost a huge amount of damage to himself as he unleashed each slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. While the slashes were very formidable, they also consumed much of the strength of the user. Xiaomu needed to maintain both his flesh and mind at their peak state to truly unleash the might of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. Otherwise, his attack would have the form, but not the essence of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. It would not retain its might too. Boom. A terrifying demonic aura enveloped Xiaomu. The cultivators from the devil world narrowed their eyes in shock. What was Xiaomu planning to do? Was he going to send out a frenzy slash? Yi Futian stood still on his spot. He looked plainly at Xiaomu. He was akin to an almighty god. There was absolute confidence shining in his eyes. He was more or less certain about Xiaomu's level of ability. From the looks of it, the 6th slash would be Xiaomu's limit. If Xiaomu could slash down the 7th time, it was possible for him to defeat Yi Futian. If Xiaomu could slash down the 8th time, Yi Futian would surely lose. Unfortunately, there was no what-if. The 6th slash would be Xiaomu's last slash. And Yi Futian was confident that he could block this 6th slash. It should be said that Yi Futian didn't intend to block it. Instead, he would retaliate. Boom. Xiaomu's body changed as he grew larger and larger. He merged with the demons in the sky and transformed into a demon himself. He wielded the blade with both his hands. When his blade will burst forth, terrifying fissures formed in the space. At this moment, Yi Futian felt threatened. He finally moved. An illusory figure appeared above Yi Futian's body. The illusory figure seemed to be Yi Futian himself. It was surrounded by divine light and abnormal phenomena. Yi Futian transformed into a deity and became one with the stars. Endless divine light of the stars shone on him. With his body as the center of the stars, an intimidating power gushed forth. Dazzling divine halos shone brightly. A sword appeared in front of Yi Futian. The celestial force all around Yi Futian rushed into the sword, causing it to keep expanding. It grew larger and transformed into a true starry divine sword. Xiaomu slashed down. The 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon caused the sky to dim as it charged towards Yi Futian. It could even slaughter gods. At the same time, The stars around Futian became one as endless starlight surged into the sword. Futian raised his arm and thrust the sword forward. The divine sword and the demonic blade collided head-on. Rumble. It was as though the world was falling apart. Apart from the divine sword, many stars cracked and shattered into pieces. The stars took the place of the starry divine sword to bear the power of the demonic blade. On the other hand, the blade was also trembling violently. It was similarly enduring an unparalleled power. One by one, the stars cracked and disintegrated. However, the divine light on the starry divine sword shone more and more brilliantly. It suppressed everything that was in its way, causing cracks to start forming on the demonic blade too. Bang! As cracks began to appear on the demonic blade, Xiaomu let out a dull groan. His face was pale. He had unleashed 6 slashes out of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon, yet it was still insufficient to defeat Futian. The blade and the sword were both destroyed. One after the other, they broke into pieces. Futian looked at Xiaomu and said, "If you could unleash the 7th slash today, the loser would be me." He stood still, and his tone was calm. It was as though the victor of the battle had been determined. This exchange between the two had indeed determined the victor. At least, that was what Futian surmised. As for whether or not this fight would continue, it depended on Xiaomu. If they continued fighting, the result would not change as long as Xiaomu didn't unleash the 7th slash. Xiaomu stood in midair quietly. His demonic will was not as rampant as before. He looked at Futian and didn't refute his words. It was as though he silently agreed to what Futian had said. Not defeating Futian with the 6th slash meant that Xiaomu had lost the fight. Xiaomu was not able to slash down for the 7th time. If he could unleash the 7th slash, the loser would surely be Futian. Even Futian admitted this. Chapter 23:17. Secret of the Devil World. The outcome of their battle was decided. Down below, the cultivators of the Devil World were quite restless when they saw this scene before them. Xiaomu had actually been defeated. Even the 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon still could not take down Futian. It had been blocked. After the power that Futian inherited from Shunjia, the Great Emperor and Great Emperor Zhuwei burst forth. Even the 8th tier Xiaomu could not touch him at all. After this slash, Xiaomu was already worn out. Unleashing the 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon had already drained all his strength. He had reached his peak condition right before that moment. However, after the slash, he had now slumped into a phase of weakness. Moreover, his demonic blade was shattered by Futian. Yet, Futian was not affected much. Right now, he was still in peak condition. His entire body was shining brightly. Brilliant divine halos radiated from his body. It was unparalleled. It looked as though he could unleash his previous attack once more at any moment. Hence, both of them knew the outcome of this battle. There was no need to continue fighting. Xiaomu admitted his defeat. This young ruler of the heavenly mandate realm was actually this strong. The various cultivators of the heavenly mandate academy secretly heaved sighs of relief. They were also moved. Futian had surpassed the boundary of planes and defeated Xiaomu, a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. It would be hard to find someone on the same plane as Futian who could contend with him in various worlds. Even if there were such figures, there would not be many of them. They would truly be rare specimens and would be monstrous figures who stood at the pinnacle of their worlds. They were looking forward to Futian's growth even more. When he reached the peak of the Runhuang Plain and experienced the divine tribulation of the Great Path, how glorious would that day be? The ruler of the original realm would truly be able to shock the cultivators of various worlds. No one would dare trespass in the original realm. Futian would become the absolute leader of the original realm. In a tavern in the distance, Meiting raised a cup of wine and drank from it. Before the battle began, even he did not know who would emerge as the victor. He was also very interested in this battle. Now that it had ended, he seemed to have a better understanding of Futian's combat ability. After all, for Meiting, Xiaomu was a good opponent for Futian and could check on Futian's ability. Did that person train Futian to this level? It should have been impossible. That person did not have the time to do so. From what Meiting learned from Yushang and the abilities that Futian displayed, Their abilities were not related to that person at all. Even for Yusheng, that person had merely passed on a set of demonic arts for Yusheng to train himself. So, Yi Futian's achievements were all related to the fateful encounters that he had. Aside from being lucky and having many opportunities for him to have come so far in his cultivation, it also meant that he was extraordinary, to begin with. He was very talented. His real identity was even more intriguing now. "Let's go," commanded Xiaomu. Then, he flew up to the sky and left the Heavenly Mandate Academy. He was a little weak. Moreover, it was meaningless for him to hang around any longer now that he had lost. The top cultivators from the Devil World took a good look at Yi Futian. Then, one by one, they flew up to the sky. Traversing the clouds, they left the place along with Xiaomu. Soon, the group disappeared of those on the ground. Only a tint of demonic aura was left lingering in the sky. The cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate Academy collectively heaved a sigh of relief after the demonic cultivators left. The latter emanated an imposing pressure on the rest of them. Even Runhuang Qian had his guard up the whole time while the demonic cultivators were around. If the group from the Devil World initiated an attack against them, it would put them in great danger. No one dared to act recklessly. After all, the incomers were cultivators from the Devil Imperial Palace. Fortunately, the source of the pressure had disappeared now. The demonic cultivators leaving meant that the crisis was over. Yi Futian looked in the direction where the demonic cultivators had disappeared to. He appeared calm and showed no sign of joy upon winning a battle. During the battle, he also sensed the immense pressure imposed by the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. It was Yi Futian's first time encountering an opponent who could clash head-on with him just with his flesh. Furthermore, the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon posed a threat to him. What would happen to him if one of the direct disciples of the Devil Emperor mastered the 7th, or even the 8th, slash? How could Yi Futian possibly defend himself against such a figure? How about the Devil Emperor himself? What kind of person was he? Renhuang Yi is indeed an unparalleled figure. Even an 8th-tier direct disciple of the Devil Emperor has lost to you, a cultivator from the Song Imperial City said to Yi Futian. The cultivator was very impressed by him. The wish of the cultivator to become acquainted with Yi Futian grew even stronger now. This battle had once again verified Yi Futian's talent. He was a bona fide exceptional figure able to defeat a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Most likely, very few people in the Divine Prefecture were comparable to Yi Futian now. I got lucky. If he mastered the 7th slash, I would most likely not have been able to withstand his attack. Yi Futian spoke humbly. Does Senior know anything about the Devil Emperor? What kind of person is he? The current Devil Emperor is a living legend in the Devil World. He became famous even before Donghuang the Great did. Before Donghuang the Great unified the Divine Prefecture, the Devil Emperor had already ended the era of various demons fighting over the Devil World. He unified the entire Devil World. People claimed that no one, past or future, could compare to him. Not only would he inherit the glory of the Devil Emperors of the ancient era, he even wanted to bring it to new heights. Bring it to new heights? Asked Yi Futian as his heart trembled. Said the cultivator from the Song Imperial City as he nodded his head. I heard that he previously tried to do so. Yi Futian's heart was racing. After unifying the Devil World, the Devil Emperor wanted to bring it to new heights. Yi Futian naturally understood what that meant. The Devil Emperor had wanted to conquer other worlds and claim them all for his own. He had even attempted to do so before. What had happened back then? Did the Devil Emperor have incredible figures beside him who were very close to him? Asked Yi Futian. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City had a pensive look. He softly said, I have heard of a secret, though I do not know whether or not it is true. This matter seems to be unknown to many. Even among the top forces, it is but a rumor that goes around. It is impossible to verify its legitimacy. What secret? Asked Yi Futian. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City continued. There were previously 2 prominent figures in the Devil World. It was not just the Devil Emperor alone. He had a brother. However, later on, this brother of his would disappear without a trace. Rumors claimed that he had betrayed the Devil Emperor. Others claimed that he had died at the hands of the Devil Emperor. There could only be one ruler of the devil world. This caused Futian's heart to beat even faster. He could faintly sense that he was approaching the truth soon. It was just that even the top figures of the Song Imperial City knew very little about it. They had only rumors to go by, and they could not even verify the legitimacy of the information. The brother of the Devil Emperor? Then, what was Yusheng's status? If what the other party claimed was true, then the brother of the Devil Emperor clearly had not died and had always been by Yusheng's side. He became a lonely, frail old man. No one knew his status and who he was. However, why would such a terrifying figure claim to be a slave? Futian could not wrap his head around this. What was the story behind all this? This information itself might be incorrect, and that person was not the brother of the Devil Emperor. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City was somewhat curious. Why was Futian inquiring about those close to the Devil Emperor? On that same note, why had the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor immediately come looking for Futian after arriving in the original realm? Mei Ting, a devil general of the devil world, seemed to be exceptionally interested in Futian. Could it be that there were some secrets behind all this? However, the cultivator from the Song Imperial City did not inquire further about this. Each person had their own secrets. As long as they were unrelated to him, there was no need to pry. He had come to befriend Futian, so he would not do anything to offend him. Prying into the secrets of others was undoubtedly one of the most offensive acts possible. Since there were secrets involved, it was naturally better for fewer people to know about it. Nobody wished to expose everything about themselves in front of others. If Renhuangyi has other questions, feel free to ask me, the cultivator from the Song Imperial City said with a smile. I have cultivated for quite a long time in the Divine Prefecture. Even though I don't claim to know much, I have heard of many things before. He appeared exceptionally sincere in his speech. Futian had just defeated a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. The battle was significant, indicating that Futian would attain even higher achievements in the future. He would certainly be able to experience a divine tribulation of the Great Path. The sky was his limit. Futian naturally sensed the goodwill of the other party. The way the cultivators of the Song Imperial City treated him now was completely different from before. This change happened because of his current status and improvement in abilities. In the past, Song Imperial City wanted to take him under their wing to control him. Now, they wanted to befriend him. Nevertheless, Futian didn't inquire further about the matters of the devil world. It would be too obvious if he continued asking about them. Cultivators from all around the world have gathered here. Since the cultivators from the devil world have arrived, most likely cultivators from the other realms will also be here, right? Futian asked. I am not sure about the cultivators from the world of Buddhism, but I think they will be here too. I'm also not so certain about what's happening in the heaven realm currently. As for the human realm, most likely some cultivators will come over, replied the cultivator from the Song Imperial City. It goes without saying for the cultivators from the dark world and the empty divine realm. Futian nodded his head. This time, the storm in the original realm was growing more and more intense. The cultivators of the Divine Prefecture were not the only ones who caught wind of it. Top forces arrived in the original realm consecutively. Aside from that, before this, the empty divine realm and the dark world had constantly sent more cultivators here. Now, the cultivators of the devil world appeared, and a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor had descended upon the original realm. Hence, Futian was speculating whether or not the cultivators from the other worlds would also come. He did not know what had happened in the battle back then. The dark world, the divine prefecture, and the empty divine realm experienced their most direct conflict ever. The world of Buddhism had good relations with the Donghuang Imperial Palace in the divine prefecture. After all, Donghuang the Great had previously ventured to the world of Buddhism to seek the path. Futian knew more about the world of Buddhism because of his relationship with Yusheng. From the looks of it, the devil world was not close with any other world. However, they also did not bear any obvious animosity towards any world. At least, that was what Futian perceived at the moment. He had previously encountered a mysterious cultivator in the heaven realm. As for the human realm, he had never come in contact with it up until now. Now, would the cultivators of the human realm also come to the original realm? Does Senior know much about the human realm? Yi Futian asked. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City replied, I know little about it. I learned about it mainly from the ancient scriptures. Some elders mentioned something before. Rumor has it that after the collapse of the heavenly path, the main world formed was the human realm. From there, division occurred, and after countless years, things are what we see today. I heard that the human ancestor of the human realm is quite close with Donghuang the Great. The former has lent his aid to the latter before. The human ancestor has lived for eons. He is kind and is adored by many people. It is said that even Donghuang the Great looks highly on him. As for whether or not the few legendary top figures have good relationships among themselves, that's not something I can possibly know. Yi Futian nodded. Those figures were people on another level. They were at the true pinnacle. They were supreme rulers of the world. The people down below could only speculate about their relationships based on what they observed. Only the legendary figures knew exactly how things were among themselves. However, based on the bits and pieces collected, Yi Futian could roughly tell that Donghuang the Great was truly an imposing hero. 300 or 400 years after he had made his name known, he was already on par with those great emperors who had been dominant for centuries. Besides that, Donghuang the Great seemed to have good relationships with the world of Buddhism and the human realm. Back then, why did Donghuang the Great go against Emperor Yiqing? Are there truly only 7 great emperors in existence? Yi Futian continued asking. Now that he had reached his current cultivation plane, he had the desire to know more about these things that were unknown to him. He wanted to know the truth of this world and its secrets. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City clearly knew more than he did. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City revealed a meaningful smile. He looked at Yi Futian and said, if there were only 7 great emperors, then, does great Emperor Ziwei, who Renhuang Yi met before, count as one of them? If not, what about Shenin the Great? When Yi Futian heard his words, he revealed a pensive look. He pondered on the meaning of these words. The other party smiled and continued saying, the world is too big. After having lived during the Age of Gods and reached the Great Emperor plane, the great emperors can create so many miracles. Even if they have truly fallen, they will still leave behind remnants of themselves. Who knows? In some remote corner of the world, there might still be a great emperor who is alive. Yi Futian nodded his head. The existence of Shanjia the Great Emperor Ziwei, and Shenin the Great also made him feel that way. There were too many mysteries and secrets in the world. Right now, he still could not comprehend all of it. The ancient God clan is a clan that claims to bear the inheritance of a deity. Is the Song Imperial City considered a force of the ancient God clan? Asked Yi Futian. The other party shook their heads and said, the Song Imperial City used to have a great emperor. However, nowadays, we no longer bear the inheritance of a great emperor. Hence, we are not considered part of the ancient God clan. In the true sense, the forces which are part of the ancient God clan are like Ziwei Imperial Palace of Great Emperor Ziwei. He left behind his teachings to them. Only then are they considered part of the ancient God clan. This is actually similar to the previous topic. The forces of the ancient God clan are considered fortunate. The teachings of the great emperors were left behind and were passed down to this day. Sadly, most of the great emperors ended up like Shenin the Great and were gradually forgotten to history. Understood, responded Yi Futian. If that was the case, the ancient God clan contained the inheritance of the great emperors in the true sense. They could actually be considered the descendants of these great emperors. If an extraordinary figure appeared among them, they would also have the opportunity to prove their path to the highest level. However, after so many years, the divine prefecture had only given birth to 2 great emperors, Donghuang the Great and Emperor Yiqing. This was highly likely due to the situation in the current world. There was also a high chance that Donghuang the Great and Emperor Yiqing had experienced some extraordinary fateful encounters. Senior, thank you for your explanation, said Yi Futian. What I said cannot be considered an explanation. I merely shared some unimportant details. Even if I didn't tell you now, Renhuang you would learn in the future. My words are not worthy of your thanks, replied the other party. Renhuang Yi controls the original realm now. Perhaps, many years later, the original realm will be a new world. Clearly, the elder was hinting at something else. The new world he mentioned alluded to an independent world. Chapter 23:19. Relic of the Cultivators. Although the original realm was an independent interface, it was still part of Divine Prefecture. It had been under the rule of Donghuang the Great since that battle long ago. If Futian wanted to obtain control over the original realm, it meant that he most definitely need to step into the imperial realm. Clearly, this was the cultivator from Song Imperial City flattering him. After that, the cultivator from Song Imperial City left as well and did not linger on much. His goal was to befriend the Heavenly Mandate Academy, but it was still premature to form an alliance. Futian had also made his stance very clear in regards to the alliance. It was necessary for those interested in this alliance to follow him in declaring war on the Dark World. This was a precarious business. What's more, even though the cultivator from Song Imperial City was optimistic about Futian's future and heaped praises upon him, these were just superficial gestures. He knew very well that Futian's position was, in fact, very unstable. Now that the original realm had attracted the attention of all the realms, the Devil World and other forces had descended closed behind each other, which meant that the original realm had become the center of an impending storm. Futian and the Heavenly Mandate Academy were the center of the original realm. They were the ones in charge of it, and everyone knew what that meant. If he wanted to climb towards imperial eminence, it would be a difficult journey fraught with many life and death situations. It sufficed to say there would be many narrow escapes on this journey. The fact was that Futian was not some exception. Out of all those many splendid talents, who wanted to be on the road to becoming another great emperor, how many of them actually succeeded? After the collapse of the Heavenly Path, the Great Path suffered considerable damage, and the road to becoming the great emperor was blocked. Many had perished on this already thorny journey. How many among them had really reached their goal? Futian had endless potential, but there were also innumerable dangers. Futian himself didn't dwell so much on these thoughts. He understood some of these things, but it didn't do any good to think obsessively about them. The only way ahead was forward. Today's conversation with the cultivator from Song Imperial City revealed some things about the top figures and the top principalities of this world. There were the Divine Prefecture from the east, the Western Heavenly World, the Ancient Heaven Realm, the Empty Divine Realm, the Devil World, the Dark World, and the Human Realm, which was the center of the world at the time when the Heavenly Path collapsed. The rulers of these 7 worlds, especially the ancient god clan from ancient times, represented the pinnacle of the cultivation world. They were the only ones who had the privilege to speak for the entire world. They were the existence that decided the rules of the world. And the domain chiefs' manners of all 18 domains and those top principalities were just secondary players. They were merely managing the world for them. He now had control over the Heavenly Mandate Academy and Ziwei Imperial Palace, but he still had a long way to go. If the teacher hadn't scared off those men, there were still many principalities in this world who could have destroyed the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Just one existence had survived the second divine tribulation. It would be tough enough for them to overcome, no matter how rare the existence was at this level. The Divine Prefecture was not without them, and whatever the Divine Prefecture had, it only stood to reason that other worlds must have some of them as well. Furthermore, he had mentioned those unknown existences in his conversation with the other. Who knows? Perhaps, the cultivator from Song Imperial City had something that he didn't yet make fully known to Futian. After all, it did have involvements at a higher level, so the other man might be more cautious in what to reveal. The road ahead of him was long. It seemed that he had to cultivate to the top of Renhuang before he could have some credibility. At that time, with the help of the physical body of Shunjia the Great Emperor, he may be able to explode with extraordinary power. But for the moment, he was limited to defeating existences of the first level of the Great Path Divine Realm and subjected to considerable backlash if he leveraged the physical body of Shunjia the Great Emperor. He had no idea how many years it would take him to set foot on the peak of Renhuang. After the Devil World and Song Imperial City cultivators left, Heavenly Mandate Academy returned to normal, and Futian continued to cultivate quietly while paying close attention to the changes in the outside world. Every few days, someone would arrive to report the latest from the outside world, and every time there were new movements in the original realm. For example, Somebody had excavated and discovered the relics of the great emperor, and that some principalities had even obtained the relics of the great emperor. When Futian heard about this, though he was enticed, he did not intend to fight for them. He had already reaped a lot from before, and that alone was enough for the others to look at him sideways. If he wanted to take all of the inheritances, he would only put himself in harm's way and become a target of public outrage. On the contrary, if each of the top forces took some of these relics from the great emperor, he would attract far less attention, sticking out like a sore thumb. On this day, Futian, Lord Taixian, Emperor Nan, and the others were gathered together. In the courtyard, Futian presided over their meeting. Although he was younger, he was now the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy, the ruler of all of the original realm. So even the elders had to defer to him. Everyone was working toward the same objective, assisting Futian to reach the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Because of this objective, these top figures were able to move forward as a team. Although their ultimate goals and beliefs were different, at the moment, they adhered to the same objective. Futian was the one they had chosen from a long time ago, and they were now more certain than ever. In addition to the cultivators from the devil world, the cultivators from the human realm have also appeared. Today, only the cultivators from heaven realm and the world of Buddhism from the west have yet to make their appearances. But the heaven realm was known to be secretive, so perhaps they have already arrived without us knowing, Emperor Nan continued. After the devil world, the cultivators from the human realm had also descended in the original realm. All the worlds had gradually made their way to the land of the original realm. What kind of storm would be waiting for them? Are there many cultivators from the human realm? Futian questioned. Not much for the time being, but there must be more that we don't know about. Now, the news had spread to the original realm. The cultivation world in the original realm is about to boil over. The situation today is comparable to the one in the past, said Emperor Nan. Actually, because of the changes currently taking place in the original realm, the situation at hand has far exceeded the one in the past. Back then, not many cultivators came to the original realm. The two just couldn't be compared. Emperor Nan, however, was a cultivator who had experienced that turbulence 300 or 403 or 400 years ago. The rumor has it that the human realm was once the center of all the worlds after the collapse of the heavenly path and the place of blessings for human cultivators. The supreme great emperor of the human realm is called the human ancestor, whose name speaks volumes of his importance. All the cultivators who came from the human realm this time were said to possess the aura of the human ancestor, an abundance of righteousness. Emperor Nan continued, I also heard that the human realm claimed to be the most orthodox of the cultivation world. Futian nodded. He also wanted to take a look at all the cultivators from all the worlds. The human realm was the center of the world, formed after the collapse of the heavenly path. He was curious how the cultivation world there would compare to the one at Divine Prefecture. How would their cultivators compare to the one from Divine Prefecture? In addition to the arrival of cultivators from all major worlds, many amazing relics have also appeared. And now, evidence of human cultivators has appeared in one of the most important sites, said Emperor Nan. Futian's eyes sharpened slightly. Same as the Ziwei segmentum? Exactly. Emperor Nan nodded. The same world as Ziwei segmentum had appeared. What could all this mean? Chapter 2320, Shini Continent. Ziwei segmentum was a world long sealed by Ziwei the Great. So, what kind of world would it be with human cultivators? At present, most of the cultivators and top principalities from various worlds are attracted by this continental relic that has just appeared. Not to mention, a world with human cultivators resembles a complete world, which entices a stronger desire to explore it. And, according to the news, the cultivators in this world are most extraordinary, Emperor Nan continued. Next to him, Renhuangchen asked Futian, shall we go check it out? Futian pondered for a moment, then agreed, we might as well. Previously there were many relics in the original realm, and he had never had the desire to go, wanting to give other people their opportunities. However, he was curious to see this other continent that had appeared in the original realm. Then let's go straight away, said Renhuangchen. Please lead the way, elder. Futian nodded, and the group immediately set off on their journey. They leaped into the sky and left the heavenly Mandate Academy, heading towards the boundless void. The land of the original realm was the void world that was formed after the collapse of the heavenly path. The 3,000 realms of the Great Path was the area of human cultivation. This area was not considered large, but beyond the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, there was nothing but an endless void, full of unknowns. For example, Ziwei Segmentum was now visible in the boundless void, and so were all those major relics that had made their appearances one after the other. Futian didn't know the actual size of the original realm, and no one else really knew anything about the original realm either. Perhaps only Donghuang the Great and other great emperors knew some of its history. At this time, a new continent was floating in the endless void of the original realm. This continent was lying in the void, a faint brilliance emanating from within. It was as if it had existed here since the beginning of time, and that it was a part of this vast space. Futian and the others passed through the edges of the continent and continued moving upward. They saw that there were cultivators on the edge of the continent at this time, but they seemed to be quite accustomed to everything that was happening in front of them, as they did not act surprised. How did this continent come about? Futian asked when he beheld the sight in front of him. The news we heard was that this continent has been traveling through the endless void, having been exiled for a countless number of years, and has not made its appearance until now, Emperor Nen responded. Futian looked lost in thoughts. If this were the case, then that would explain the reactions of those cultivators on the continent. A world that had been exiled in the endless emptiness would obviously get used to all of this, and may even felt what they saw now was pretty mundane. But who had the terrible ability to exile an entire continent? Futian and the others continued forward towards the continent. The cultivators on the continent looked up at Futian and the others as they passed, but then bowed their heads and went back to their own businesses. Similar occurrences had been happening recently as cultivators from the outside came to their continent, so they had grown accustomed to it. The cultivation of these people is awesome, Futian whispered as he walked forward. The cultivators on this continent felt extraordinary to him. Even those on the fringe of the continent were not at a low level. The lowest cultivation turned out to be the Saint Plain. If it's a continent that has gone through tribulations, then it must be an extraordinary continent, Ren Huangchen whispered. Everyone nodded in agreement. If this continent had really been exiled in the endless void, and if it was able to survive until this day, then neither the continent itself nor the cultivators on it would be ordinary. Otherwise, it would have already been annihilated in its long history. The group meandered forward aimlessly. Although this continent was newly discovered with cultivators, it was different from Ziwei Segmentum, which was a field of stars. Here, it was merely a continent. Looking from another angle, the continent might have just been a place for the most powerful figures in ancient times. Of course, even for Top Renhuang, this continent was still massive, at least for someone in Futian's realm. They continued to travel through the continent, but still didn't seem to have reached the central area. Futian and the others looked at everything on the continent below. It didn't seem too different from Divine Prefecture and the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, as far as cities, mountains, jungles, and cultivators were concerned, except that the aura of these cultivators on this continent was somewhat different. Generally speaking, their realm seemed to be a little higher. Shall we go down and make some inquiries? Renhuang Chan asked Futian. Very well. Futian understood his meaning and agreed. Instantly, Renhuang Chen moved, and in a flash was aiming towards the sky below. Not long after, Renhuang Chen returned and said, same as the rumors. This continent is known as Shunny Continent by the cultivators who resided upon it. According to them, it is a continent abandoned by the gods in ancient times. It has been floating in the void world for many years, constantly moving, and now appears in the original realm. As to the reason, they are as clueless as anyone. If we want the truth, we could go to Shini City, which is the center of this continent, and also where the strongest cultivators are. Futian nodded. So this was Shini Continent. Even the cultivators on the continent knew that they were being abandoned by the gods once upon a time. But judging from their present situation, could the abandonment have been, in fact, a form of protection? Because of the abandonment, the continent did not perish and was able to see the light of day. Let's go, said Futian. Do these cultivators on the continent, like the ones in Zway segmentum, know the origins of their own continent? I was also curious about that, so I did some research. According to them, generations upon generations of ancestors have been exploring the continent for many years, wanting to see other worlds of cultivation and cultivators. After reaching the peak level, they discovered that this continent has great limitations, and the world seemed far too small. However, for years immemorial, they have not discovered anything until now. They have ascertained that all the legends were true. They were abandoned and exiled by the gods, and now they have truly come into contact with the outside world, Ren Huangchen explained. Yi Futian appeared thoughtful. They were not the only ones who were curious about this continent. The cultivators on the continent, too, had never stopped their search for the outside world until they had come to the original realm and discovered the truth. Perhaps they were just as curious about the original realm as anyone else. So, the top forces from original realm should have already gone to Sheni City already, Yi Futian commented. Ren Huangchun nodded. Then the group continued on its way in their mighty formation. Chapter 23-21, Midair Collision. Sheni City, the main city of this continent. When Yi Futian and the others arrived in Sheni City, they felt an overpowering ancient aura. The architecture of this city was towering and ancient, full of solemnity, holding the aura of the Great Path. Its buildings were extremely sturdy, which was different from the structures found in the Divine Prefecture and the original realm. Perhaps this was because the continent had constantly been traveling through the storms in the void, so its buildings had to be incredibly sturdy to withstand the abuse of the weather, lest they should be destroyed by those incessant storms. After Yi Futian and the others arrived in this main city, they felt many divine consciousnesses scanning them. They were all powerful. Sheni City was now the gathering place of powerful cultivators from all sides. Besides top local cultivators, there were also cultivators from other major worlds. They were paying close attention to everything. The arrival of Yi Futian and the others had clearly attracted some attention. Sheni City was vast, but the distance that could be covered by the divine consciousness of those top figures was also quite considerable. 4 giant-level figures, their divine consciousness was sufficient to cover an entire city. Behind Yi Futian, the divine consciousness of Ren Huangchun and other cultivators spread out, surveilling the cultivators inside Sheni City. Yi Futian himself did the same. He stood high above the sky as he released his divine consciousness and let it sweeping through this vast and endless area. He saw an area of note that had many cultivators gathering there. It seemed that many cultivators of the top forces from the original realm were crowding around that area. Furthermore, that extraordinary place piqued his curiosity as well. The aura emanated from there was incredibly terrifying. "Let's go," Yi Futian said, and his group of people immediately moved towards that area. Everyone looked particularly serious. Obviously, Yi Futian was not the only one who realized this. The others had also noticed the odd phenomenon there. It didn't take long before they came to the outskirt of the area. This area was very extensive, and there were cultivators from various top forces stationed in different directions. Among them, some of the forces had cultivators with terrifying aura, along with shockingly powerful lineups. Previously, compared with other top forces, the camp of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, as represented by Yi Futian, was definitely a strong one. Apart from their lack of a powerful existence who had survived the second divine tribulation, few forces could be compared with them. However, in this city of the relic, he discovered several forces that were stronger than theirs. The Dark World was a foregone conclusion. The Infernal King was there with top figures of many forces from the Dark World. In addition, there were many cultivators from the empty divine realm, which Yi Futian had not seen before. Obviously, they had come here after the changes in the original realm had intensified. If these two principalities had arrived for a while, in another position, there was a group of powerful men with extraordinary temperament, exuding awe-inspiring righteousness. Every one of them had an outstanding posture and unparalleled style, and any one of them seemed to possess a particularly stunning style. Are those the cultivators from the human realm? Yi Futian thought. Cultivators from the devil world were in another direction, and their temperament was unmistakable. Xiao Mu, who Yi Futian had defeated, was also among them. The Western world was composed of Buddhist cultivators and would be easily identifiable. By way of deduction, these could only be cultivators from the heaven realm or the human realm. However, the heaven realm was shrouded in mystery and had undergone major travesties. This group of cultivators had such an outstanding temperament that the only possibility was that they were cultivators from the human realm. Aside from that, there were many top forces from divine prefecture, including some with astounding temperaments. After all, the original realm was still considered the territory belonging to divine prefecture, so it was not surprising that most of these cultivators were from divine prefecture. Top forces from all sides were represented here, but clearly, that was not the case with other realms. Some of the top figures from divine prefecture were not any lesser than the cultivators from imperial palaces of each world. Here, ordinary genius talents were eclipsed. While Yi Futian observed these cultivators, other cultivators were also observing him, as many divine consciousnesses fell upon him. Clearly, they already knew who Yi Futian was. The dark world and the devil world needed no introduction, and many in the divine prefecture also knew of him. Those cultivators who were constantly scanning Yi Futian with their divine consciousness were mostly people who had never seen him before but knew him only by reputation. He was the genius talent who ruled the original realm as a Runhuang in the seventh realm and the #1 man in the original realm. He was the one who had suppressed all the geniuses in the divine prefecture, the heir of several great emperors, and no one who could compete with him. In addition, there was also a mysterious teacher in Four Corner Village who was solidly behind him, protecting him. He who might even be a mysterious cultivator of the imperial realm. Many of these divine consciousness that landed on Yi Futian seemed quite impertinent, and it displeased him. Peeping using the divine consciousness itself was an impolite act, and mostly it was done with a quick sweep, enough to know the existence of the other. However, if the scanning was done back and forth for a prolonged period of time, it was regarded as an act of open insolence. However, at this moment, many were behaving rudely. They had been looking up and down at Yi Futian as their divine consciousness continued to scan him. Some of the divine consciousnesses were particularly rude, which caused Yi Futian to frown. He laughed coldly, sending out his own divine consciousness instantly. It collided with that other divine consciousness. Some of them retreated on their own, but some persisted, choosing to confront him head-on. Although Yi Futian was not from any imperial palace, he was the heir of several great emperors and lord of the original realm. His position was so exceptional that no matter who challenged him, he would never back down. A super-aggressive divine consciousness collided with Yi Futian's. When he traced that divine consciousness, Yi Futian found its owner. A group of remarkable characters stood together, one of whom was wearing a golden robe, richly decorated. His aura was stunning with coercion that could only be found on an upper Renhuang. He was extremely domineering, and he was surrounded by brilliant golden divine glory. Cultivator from the empty divine realm, Yi Futian remarked to himself, recognizing where the other was from. Boom! A violent storm swept across the sky and headed his way. The cultivator from the empty divine realm cast a look at Yi Futian from very far away, and those eyes seemed to penetrate the space and landed directly on Yi Futian, with an overpowering spirit. Like a majestic and commanding god, examining Yi Futian closely. 20-some years ago in the original realm, the empty divine realm had tasted defeat in Yi Futian's hands. A sudden coercion of this great path was felt keenly by everyone, as an equally astonishing momentum erupted from Yi Futian's body at the same time. The divine light circulated above the body of the great path, and a violent roar was heard, booming non-stop, terrorizing its audience. When the two forces collided in midair, an invisible storm manifested in the surrounding spaces so that cultivators from all sides were compelled to watch the two colliding in the air. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.